This is Booked for Drama, where stories burn, hearts break, the tea is always hot and never a part two. Today we're diving into repainting my life once tethered, now free by unknown. Let's go. Chapter 1. After discovering that his ex-girlfriend, Lilian Bowen, had returned from Paris after completing her fashion studies, my husband, Gale Douglas, began to drift away. It started slowly at first, like casual mentions of Lilian's career, the admiration in his voice when he spoke of her success. Soon, it became undeniable. Gale was captivated, following her like a loyal duckling trailing its mother. When Lilian opened her boutique in Providence, Gale not only attended but became her greatest sponsor, investing time, money, and admiration in a way I had never seen before. I had been Gale's wife for 4 years, yet somehow, I could not compete with his new old flame. Gale's eyes sparkled in Lilian's presence, and her every achievement seemed to eclipse my existence. The day of my graduation, a day I had dreamed of sharing with my husband, came and went. Gale was not by my side, as he had promised. Instead, he flew to New York with Lilian for Fashion Week. I was left standing alone, feeling the ache of his absence and the humiliation of explaining it to others. When I confronted him, Gale dismissed my feelings as petty. "Don't be spoiled," he'd say. "You have everything here, drivers, maids, chefs, and butlers. Lilian, though, she's alone in Providence, far from her family. She needs support. But what about me? What about the milestones, the small and large victories I wanted to share with my husband?" The final straw came when Gale accompanied Lilian to Paris Fashion Week. Meeting her parents and integrating himself even deeper into her world. I had lost him, and with every fiber of my being, I knew it was time to let go. The decision, when it came, was bittersweet but clear. I signed the divorce papers and left Douglas Manor. My next destination was Italy, where I could finally pursue my master degree, free from Gale's shadow and his divided heart. As I prepared to leave, I sent Gale one last message. "Rachel, since there's nothing left for me here, I will leave you to the life you have always wanted." His reply was cold, dismissive, and painfully revealing. "Gale, how can you live without me? Without my money?" At that moment, tears welled up, as I realized I had been little more than a possession to him, an accessory in his world rather than a partner in his life. I blocked his number, severing the last tie between us, determined to start fresh and find my own path. Days later, I heard from mutual friends that Gale was frantically searching for me, sending messages I had never received. "Rachel, I'm sorry. Please come back to me. Tomorrow, I would finally graduate after 4 years of intense study, majoring in painting at the Rhode Island School of Design. That was a day I had longed to share with my husband, Gale. But when I mentioned it to him over dinner, his response was as cold as the winter wind. "I have something to do tomorrow," he said curtly. "I'll just send you flowers." With that, he rose from the table, already engrossed in his phone, leaving me staring at the empty space where he had sat, feeling as though I had been dismissed from his life entirely. In recent months, just when I thought Gale had started to warm up to me, he grew distant again. The cause of his sudden change was no secret that his ex-girlfriend, Lilian Bowen, had returned from Paris, planning to open her own boutique in Providence. Since her arrival, Gale has been at her side, like funding her dreams, supporting her every step, as if she were his wife. For a whole month, I watched as he catered to her every need, lavishing her with his time and attention, while I was left with nothing but brief, dismissive conversations, and half-hearted gestures. A month ago, I opened my own art exhibition, a milestone I had worked tirelessly toward. Gale did not come. He could not even spare a day to witness what I had created. Instead, he sent a bouquet of flowers with a generic note, a gesture that felt more like an obligation than a celebration. Yet, when Lilian needed him to pick her up from the airport, he rushed to her side without hesitation. For her, he even managed to make time to arrange every detail for her boutique's opening in Providence, as if she was the center of his world. It felt as though I were nothing more than a ghost in my own marriage, haunting the halls of Douglas Manor, invisible to the man I had committed my life to. Frustration bubbling up inside me, I followed him upstairs, my voice breaking the silence. "Why are you so cruel, Gale? When you didn't come to my art exhibition last month, I held my tongue. When you went to pick up Lilian from the airport instead of spending time with me, I kept quiet. And when you poured your time and money into her boutique, I didn't complain. But now, on my graduation day, you can't even spare a few hours for me? Is it all because of Lilian, again?" My voice was shaking, and perhaps the maids could hear, but I did not care. I needed him to understand the pain he was causing me. He turned to me, sliding his phone into his pocket, his face a mixture of annoyance and disdain. Without a word, he stepped closer, pressing me against the wall with a force that made me shiver. "What are you fussing about this time?" he sneered. "Is your monthly allowance not enough? Or do you need some luxury gift? Just say it, Rachel, instead of making a scene." His words hit me like a slap. His insults cut deeper than he could ever know, reducing everything I felt for him to something material and shallow. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, "I don't need your money, Gale. I need you. I need my husband to be with me, to care for me. That's all I've ever wanted." But my vulnerability seemed to amuse him. He smirked, his gaze cold and mocking as he pinched my chin roughly. "Your tears don't work on me, Rachel. And I will never give you what you want. Don't expect me to attend your graduation," he said, his voice like ice. He released my chin with a sharp tug, leaving it stinging and red. Without another word, he turned, slamming the door of his bedroom so hard it reverberated through the house. Our marriage had always been empty, but in that moment, the reality of it crushed me. From the very start, our union had been nothing but a contract, an agreement arranged by his mother. We lived in separate rooms, strangers under one roof. To Gale, I was no more than a maid, tending to his every need as if that was the only reason I existed. Though the manor was full of staff, he insisted that I be the one to lay out his clothes, draw his bath, and make his bed each day. A mockery of a marriage, stripped of affection, intimacy, or kindness. The man I had once hoped to build a life with had become an unbearable stranger. And though my heart ached with the memories of every kindness I had tried to give him, every hope I had once clung to, I knew that I had to let them all go starting from that day. Chapter 2. Growing up as an orphan, I often spent my days painting in the yard of the orphanage, dreaming of a life far beyond the walls that confined me. I longed for someone who might see my potential, adopt me, and help me pursue my passion for art. My greatest dream was to become a famous painter and open my own studio, a place where my creations could flourish. Then, after graduating high school, a woman offered me a rare chance. They would fund my studies at the Rhode Island School of Design, RISD. One of the finest art schools in the U.S. However, there was only one condition. I would need to marry their son, Gale, who was 5 years older than me and heartbroken after his longtime girlfriend had left him to move to Paris. I hesitated at first. After all, I was only 18, and Gale was 23. "But does he know about this?" I asked. "Yes, and he has agreed," she replied, her gaze softening. As a result, I accepted, partly out of gratitude and partly out of duty. Her mother had shown me a kindness I had never known, and I wanted to repay her. Gale and I entered the marriage more like acquaintances than lovers, but I held out hope that, over time, we might grow close. During college, I tried to carry my own weight too, by earning scholarships, selling my paintings online, and doing my best not to burden Gale financially. But Gale treated me like an inconvenience. Cold and indifferent, he barely acknowledged my efforts, regarding me as though I was an unwanted guest in his life. On our wedding day, he refused even to kiss me, turning away the moment the ceremony was over. The rare times Gale came to my room were on nights he was drunk, and those encounters were never out of affection. Rather than calling it love, it felt like a violation, a reminder that I was tolerated, not cherished. One night, he stumbled into my room, his eyes glazed from drinking. I tensed, already sensing what was about to happen. "Rachel," he slurred, leaning against the doorframe, "why don't you ever come to my room?" "You never asked me to," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "And it's not like you wanted this marriage any more than I did." He scoffed, crossing the room unsteadily and grabbing my arm. "You, just here. Because of my mother. Without her, you, nothing." The words stung, even though I had heard them many times before. "Yes, Gale," I whispered, as his grip tightened. "I know. The years passed, and I endured it all out of loyalty to her mother, who had been my only source of kindness and support. I even turned down an offer to study abroad, fearing that leaving would disappoint her. But no matter what I did, I could never fill the place in Gale's heart that had always belonged to Lilian, his ex-girlfriend. I was nothing more than a substitute, a shadow of the person she truly loved. So, that night, after arguing with Gale, I felt a quiet resolve settle in me. My professor's words echoed in my mind. "The scholarship is yours if you want it. Italy is waiting for you, Rachel." It was more than an opportunity, it was a lifeline. The chance to study in Italy felt like a door finally opening after years of being locked away. That was why I had decided to walk through it, to leave behind everything that had held me back. The next morning, as I joined Gale for breakfast, he barely acknowledged me, his attention glued to his phone. The events of the previous night seemed to have slipped his mind entirely. I cleared my throat, determined to press on, to speak the truth that had been aching in me for so long. Gale, I began, trying to keep my tone light, what would you think if I did a master's degree in Italy? He did not look up, just waved a hand as if dismissing a minor detail. It's up to you, he mumbled, his eyes still fixed on his phone screen. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to continue. And since I'll be there for a while, I said, careful to keep my voice steady, what about a divorce? This time, I thought he would stop, maybe look at me, ask for an explanation. But instead, his response was the same casual indifference. No problem, he muttered, still scrolling, completely unfazed. A strange mix of relief and sorrow washed over me. There it was, all the proof I needed that I had been nothing more than a fixture in his life, something he would not miss once it was gone. Gale had not even noticed that I had stopped preparing his clothes, or his water bath, since I had gradually handed those responsibilities to the maids. Everything he once demanded of me had slipped away, and he had not blinked. Okay then, I said, pushing back my chair and standing. I looked down at my untouched breakfast, realizing I had no appetite left. As I rose, my eyes drifted to his phone, where a message thread glowed on the screen. The contact name, my Lily, was unmistakable. Gale was chatting with Lilian, her name in his phone a reminder of everything I could never be to him. His world, his devotion, his heart, those were all reserved for her. Then suddenly a call came to his phone, it was from Lilian. After listening to her, he directly answered, fully aware, I'll be there in a minute. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. So, this is what it feels like, to finally know where you stand, I thought. Chapter 3. After breakfast, I made my way to campus for my graduation ceremony, my emotions swirling between pride and a quiet sense of sorrow. That day marked the end of my years at the Rhode Island School of Design, a journey I had poured my heart into. Soon, I would be leaving for Italy to pursue my dreams. But as I stood there, diploma in hand, surrounded by a crowd of graduates celebrating with their families, the familiar ache of loneliness crept in. All around me, parents hugged their children, some took a photo with their loved one, and laughter filled the air. It was a day designed to be shared, yet there I was, alone in a sea of love and celebration. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it should not matter, that I had grown used to that feeling long ago. But it still hurt, the absence of someone who should have been by my side, especially that day. Well, this is how it usually is, so no need to be sad that Gale didn't come. Rachel, I murmured to myself, forcing a smile as I took a steadying breath. It was just another day alone, after all. Fortunately, that day my professor came to congratulate me. He was delighted to hear I had accepted his scholarship offer and treated me to lunch as a warm, congratulations. Italy's going to be a revelation for you, Rachel, he said with a beaming smile. I can't wait to see the artist you become. Thank you, Professor, I answered with a smile on my face. His words really filled me with hope, but as I left campus and made my way home, a shadow of doubt crept in. I found myself gazing out of the car window as we passed by the courthouse, the building looming large in my mind. The idea of divorce hung over me, and I almost asked the driver to stop. But then I thought of Gale's mother. How would she feel if I went through with it? With a sigh, I decided against it for that moment. As if by fate, my phone buzzed, and her name flashed on the screen. Rachel, dear, she greeted me warmly. Congratulations on your graduation. How about we go shopping together to celebrate? It seems nice. I asked the driver to change course, heading back to the manor to pick her up. When I saw her standing there, a soft warmth replaced my anger toward Gale. Despite everything, his mother had always treated me with kindness. Somehow, being with her felt like I still had a family. We spent hours browsing through the shops, chatting like old friends, and she made sure I did not leave empty-handed. As she inspected a designer bag, I idly scrolled through my phone, checking messages, and then a notification caught my eye. It was a post from Lilian. She was at New York Fashion Week. And standing beside her, beaming, was Gale, their arms linked as they posed like a couple. The caption read, "So happy to be here again this year, especially with someone you love." My heart clenched painfully. So, that was why he could not come to my graduation. My grip on my phone tightened as Gale's mother turned to me, noticing my tension. Rachel, dear, is everything all right? she asked, her eyes filled with concern. I forced a smile, swallowing my disappointment. Yes, I'm fine. Have you found what you like, Mom? Yeah, I bought it for you too. I hope you like it, she said with a warm smile while handing a shopping bag to me. I directly answered, of course, I like it. Thank you for everything. Returning home, the manor felt emptier than ever. Gale did not come back that night, or the next few. I tried to distract myself, but a nagging feeling kept me on edge. A few days later, I saw another post from Lilian. She was in Paris for Fashion Week. Once again, Gale was right beside her, looking at her with pride and adoration. The more I looked, the more my stomach twisted. Curiosity getting the best of me, I clicked through Lilian's stories, each photo stoking the fire of my frustration. One picture showed Gale with Lilian at her parents' home, celebrating her birthday. In the next, he was kissing her cheek, his arm wrapped protectively around her. Why don't you two just move in together already? I muttered bitterly, feeling a stab of anger I had not felt before. The thought gnawed at me, and finally, I could not hold back any longer. My heart raced as I threw my phone aside, gathered my things, and told the driver to take me to the courthouse. That time, I would not hesitate. I entered the courthouse and signed the divorce papers, my signature firm and resolute. No more wondering, no more waiting. I was taking back control of my life. A few days later, Gale returned from Paris. That evening, I prepared dinner for us, the first time we had eaten together in weeks. I was calm, focused, the divorce papers, neatly folded beside my plate. As he took his seat, I handed the documents across the table. As Gale saw the file, without a hint of reaction, he pushed the papers back toward me. Put it in my study. I 11 review it later. Stunned by his dismissiveness, I struggled to keep my composure. You, not even going to look at them? I asked, unable to mask the disappointment in my voice. After everything, that was his response? Gale sighed, reaching for his phone. Rachel, can we not do this now? I just got back. I'm tired. Gale, I pressed, my voice trembling, do you even care? You haven't noticed anything, have you? I stopped waiting on you, I stopped being the obedient wife. You barely noticed I was even gone. Look, he said with a careless wave of his hand, just because you throwing a tantrum doesn't mean I need to jump. Very time. Now if you done, please let me have a peaceful dinner. For a long moment, I stared at him. In his indifference, I found my answer. I stood up, clutching the papers to my chest, and finally felt the strength to let go. All right, Gale, I whispered, barely able to meet his gaze. I'll leave them in your study. But this time, I'm truly done waiting for you. I turned and walked away, the papers in hand. As I placed the divorce papers on his desk, my gaze drifted to a stack of receipts and statements lying in a scattered pile. My heart sank as I scanned through them. The list of his expenses for the month since Lilian returned was exorbitant, a full fifth higher than usual. Each item stung more than the last. Among the charges was a new penthouse purchase. I knew immediately who it was. An impulse, I grabbed a sticky note from his desk and scrawled a short message. Make sure you sign it. Chapter 4. I started packing early, sorting through years of memories and belongings with a newfound clarity. Gale and I might have had separate rooms, but we shared the same closet, one I had once carefully stocked with his clothes, his accessories, his everything. It had been my routine, preparing his things every morning, a way to keep the peace in our detached marriage. However, it was time to let go. As I folded my own clothes, I noticed the gifts I had given Gale over the years for his birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays. Each one was untouched, still wrapped and stashed away as if they were meaningless trinkets. My heart ached at the sight. I had poured thought and care into each gift, hoping in vain that they would show him how much I had once tried to be a loving wife. I directly gathered them up and placed them in the donation pile. They would go to someone who might actually appreciate them. Alongside them, I left behind anything Gale had bought for me. Jewelry, designer clothes, anything he had given as a token to keep me quiet in his life, they all stayed. I only packed the things I had bought with my own money, earned from the small but steady sales of my paintings. Once my donation box was ready, I loaded it into my car and headed to the orphanage where I had grown up. Stopping at a supermarket on the way, I picked up some snacks for the children. I might be leaving soon, but they were still a part of my heart. As I entered the orphanage, the woman who had raised me with endless patience and kindness, the one I called Mother, greeted me with open arms. We settled in a quiet corner, chatting like mother and daughter. After a while, I took a deep breath and shared my plans with her. I'm going to Italy for further studies, one told her, a small smile on my face. Her eyes lit up, and she clasped my hands in hers. Oh, Rachel, I knew you were meant for great things, she said warmly. You deserve every bit of happiness coming your way. Her words were like balm on a wound, giving me the strength to share the next piece of news. I am divorcing Gale. For a moment, her face fell, and she looked at me with concern. She knew how close I was to Gale's mother, and perhaps she had once hoped our marriage could bring me the family I had never had. But as I explained my reasons, her expression softened, and she nodded with understanding. Sometimes, letting go is the bravest thing we can do, she murmured, patting my hand. You have to follow your own path, Rachel. I nodded and hugged her, thank you. As evening fell, I drove back home, taking my time along the quiet roads. It was our usual dinner hour, but tonight, I felt no urgency to rush back, no pressure to make it on time. In the past, I would have pushed the speed limit just to ensure I arrived before dinner began, knowing how Gale would react if I were late. He had always been strict about it, insisting we share breakfast and dinner every day. It had puzzled me for years. Why did he care so much about these shared meals when there was no real relationship between us? Sometimes, I wondered if it was all for show, a way for him to prove to the household staff that we were a normal couple. But we slept in separate rooms, lived separate lives. So, why should we act like a couple then? Even until that time, I still thought that it was the weird routine Gale always forced me. To my surprise, when I walked into the manor, I was greeted by an unexpected scene in the living room. Gale's younger sister, Grit, and Lilian were there, surrounded by shopping bags branded with luxury logos. Grit glanced up, her expression haughty as ever. Oh, you, finally home. Rachel, why so late? We, hungry. Because the chef could not come today, so go cook for us. Her words stung, each one a reminder of the thankless role I had played in their lives. I glanced at Lilian, who avoided meeting my gaze, choosing instead to fuss with a new handbag. At that moment, Gale appeared from the hallway, seemingly out of nowhere, and announced, no need to fuss about cooking tonight. Let's just have dinner outside. His gaze quickly shifted to Lilian, his tone softening. What do you feel like eating, Lily? Lilian's face lit up with excitement, her eyes shining as she wrapped her hand around his arm. I want steak. Can we go to our favorite place? The one we used to go to in college? Gale nodded without hesitation and grabbed his car keys. Watching them so comfortable and at ease together, I tried to slip away, hoping to avoid joining this little reunion of theirs. But Gale caught my movement and turned to me. Come with us. You must be hungry too. I hesitated, keeping my voice steady. No, thanks. I'm not hungry. That wasn't a question, Rachel. His face turned a shade darker, his voice laced with irritation. I sighed, feeling the weight of his gaze on me, and reluctantly agreed. Fine. In the car, Lilian and Gale sat in the front seats, laughing and reminiscing, while I was relegated to the back with Grit. She sat as far away as possible, treating me like an unwelcome stranger. Grit and Lilian chatted, exchanging stories and laughter, while I stayed silent, my gaze fixed out the window as the city lights blurred by. When we arrived at the restaurant, I felt a wave of bitter familiarity. That was the same steakhouse Gale had taken me to countless times, never once mentioning that it had once been his and Lilian's place. It turned out, everything I had thought was us had never truly been about us at all. Chapter 5. As we entered, a waiter recognized us immediately, greeting us with a smile. Ah, Mr. and Mrs. Douglas. It's been a while since we've seen you both. I could see that Lilian's expression was darkened when she heard that. So, she directly grabbed Gale's arm, as if declaring if he was mine at that time. That gesture confused the waiter, but Gale did not seem to notice. He simply requested, table for 4, please. Right this way, the waiter replied, leading us to a familiar table, ignoring the scene that happened between us. The truth was, that restaurant was one of Gale's favorites because the steak was cooked tableside, allowing diners to watch, or even cook it themselves. It was something he had always insisted I do, never mentioning that it had once been a ritual he shared with Lilian. As the grill heated up, Grit moved to show off, grabbing the cooking tongs with a confident smirk. I'm actually pretty good at this, you know. I just don't like cooking unless I have to. Let me show you all. She flipped the steak expertly, creating a dramatic sizzle as the juices hit the hot grill. Everything seemed fine until the oil from the meat began to drip onto the coals, causing the flames to flare up unexpectedly. Lilian jumped, startled, and in her panic, accidentally knocked over the grill, scattering hot embers in all directions. The embers flew toward Lilian and me, both of us seated closest to the grill. Grit managed to dodge just in time, having noticed the oil drip seconds before. But before I could even react, Gale had already sprung into action, scooping Lilian up in his arms. His voice was filled with panic as he shouted to the waiter, "Call an ambulance. She's been burned, this is serious." My skin stung from where the embers had landed on me, but Gale's focus was entirely on Lilian. He did not even glance my way and did not seem to notice that I was hurt too. For him, there was only Lilian in that moment. As I sat there in silence, my hand instinctively brushed over the small burns on my arm, the pain sharp and immediate. The waiter, who had been rushing to get help, glanced at me and noticed my discomfort. "Mrs. Douglas, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" I opened my mouth to respond, but Gale's voice cut through the air as he cradled Lilian closer, brushing a soothing hand. Already sprung into action, scooping Lilian up in his arms. His voice was filled with panic as he shouted to the waiter, "Call an ambulance. She's been burned, this is serious." My skin stung from where the embers had landed on me, but Gale's focus was entirely on Lilian. He did not even glance my way and did not seem to notice that I was hurt too. For him, there was only Lilian in that moment. As I sat there in silence, my hand instinctively brushed over the small burns on my arm, the pain sharp and immediate. The waiter, who had been rushing to get help, glanced at me and noticed my discomfort. "Mrs. Douglas, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" I opened my mouth to respond, but Gale's voice cut through the air as he cradled Lilian closer, brushing a soothing hand over her hair. "Make sure she's taken care of quickly," he ordered, his tone filled with urgency. The waiter looked back at me, hesitating, unsure who to prioritize. Seeing his confusion, I forced a small smile. "I'm fine. Just, please help her first." Gale shot me a brief, dismissive glance, as if finally realizing I was there. "Rachel, if you hurt, deal with it. Just don't make a scene," he muttered, his voice cold. I felt a pang in my chest, but I managed to keep my expression calm. "I wouldn't dream of making a scene, Gale." He gave a curt nod, dismissing me as he returned his full attention to Lilian, gently guiding her outside as they waited for the ambulance. Grit stood nearby, visibly annoyed. "Great, now our night is ruined," she muttered under her breath, not sparing a single glance at me. Once they were out of sight, I finally allowed myself to wince, feeling the burn marks sting along my arm. The waiter noticed and returned with a cold compress, looking at me with sympathy. "Here, ma'am. This should help." "Thank you," I whispered, pressing the cold cloth against my skin, grateful for his kindness in the absence of any from the people I had once called family. I secretly muttered, "This is the last time I will ever be ignored." After leaving the restaurant, I took a taxi straight to the hospital, my hand stinging from the burns I had endured in silence. In the emergency room, the doctor examined my wound carefully. "You're lucky," he said, cleaning the affected area. "It's not too deep. With proper care, it should heal in a few days." "Thanks, Doc." However, as I waited to pay, I overheard two nurses chatting nearby, their voices low but audible. "Did you hear? Mr. Douglas booked an entire floor for Lilian and brought in specialists for her consultation." I could not help the bitter smile that crept onto my face. He had never gone to such lengths for me, even when I had needed him most. Shaking off the thought, I handed my credit card to the receptionist, only for her to frown and hand it back to me. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but this card has been blocked." I glanced down at the card, realizing it was one Gale had issued me. He must have already seen the divorce papers and decided to cancel it as punishment. "Oh, sorry, my mistake." I forced a smile, handing over my personal card, the one that held the savings I had managed to accumulate from selling my artwork. Habit is a powerful thing, I thought, a small shiver running through me. For years, I had relied on Gale's provisions, but then I saw how fragile that dependency really was. With my hand freshly bandaged, I returned to the manor, determined to avoid Gale and Lilian, who would be spending the night at the hospital. The staff, seeing the bandage, looked at me with concern, but I waved it off. "It's just a small injury," I assured them. "Please, don't worry, and I apologize for disturbing you so late." As I woke up the next morning, a soft chime on my phone interrupted me. I glanced at the screen, barely containing a gasp. It was an admission notice from the Arts Academy in Italy, confirming my acceptance. The school requested that I submit an artwork as part of the final requirements. The thrill of it overpowered everything else. I wasted no time. Grabbing my art supplies, I made my way to my car. The driver offered to take me, but I declined, feeling a surge of independence. I drove to the RISD Museum, seeking inspiration among the art and history that had once captivated me. The hours melted away as I sketched and painted, losing myself in the process on my studio. For the first time in ages, I felt free, as if the weight of my marriage had lifted, allowing me to breathe and create without boundaries. With each brushstroke, I felt a part of myself returning, a part one had long abandoned in Gale's shadow. I was so absorbed that I had not realized night had fallen until my phone rang, shattering the peace of the studio. I glanced at the caller ID. It was Gale. A flicker of annoyance made me answer. "What's the matter? Where are you?" His voice was sharp, laced with irritation. He must have returned home, expecting to find me there, sitting dutifully at the dinner table. "Wherever I am is none of your business, Mr. Douglas," I replied, my tone icy. His silence was brief, but I could practically feel his anger crackling through the line. "How long are you going to keep up this tantrum, Rachel? Is this about the credit card?" He scoffed. "If it really is, you should stop playing games with these divorce papers. We both know you can't survive without me." I took a steadying breath, steeling myself before I replied. "In fact, I can." And with that, I hung up, blocking his number without a second thought. Moments later, a message appeared on my screen. "Gale, come back right now, or I will drag you home." I typed my response without hesitation. "Rachel, never." And with a final, liberating swipe, I blocked his contact. Chapter 6. Blocking Gale's number brought an unexpected sense of relief, as if I had finally shut the door on years of frustration and emptiness. For a moment, I found myself wondering why I had not done it sooner. Perhaps I had always known, deep down, that we were never compatible, that the marriage was never really about us. The memory of our first meeting flashed vividly in my mind. Gale's mother had invited me to dinner at an upscale restaurant, hoping that meeting her son in person might make our arrangement feel more natural. I dressed modestly, not expecting much. But when Gale saw me approaching the table, the look on his face said it all. Disgust flickered in his eyes as he glanced at my attire, as though my simplicity was an insult to him. Noticing the tension, Gale's mother quickly suggested, "How about we go shopping after dinner, Rachel?" But Gale, already looking at his watch, scoffed, "Mom, I'm busy." We agreed on dinner, nothing more. His mother frowned, but refused to give in. "Fine, then. I'll have a girls' day out with Rachel instead." "You never did enjoy shopping with women," she replied, her tone a mix of playfulness and irritation. Reluctantly, Gale agreed to join us, though it was clear he had rather been anywhere else. He followed us at a distance, his expression sour, trailing behind the guards who carried the bags as we moved from shop to shop. Every time I tried on a new dress, Gale's mother would beam and compliment me. Even the guards seemed surprised, their faces lighting up as they saw the transformation with each outfit. "Oh, Rachel, this dress is just perfect for you," Gale's mother would exclaim. She would glance over at Gale, eager for his approval. "Doesn't she look wonderful, Gale?" He barely looked up, his expression dripping with disdain. "An ugly duckling will always be ugly," he muttered coldly. The comment stung, and his mother's face tightened with frustration. Determined to turn the outing around, she gave him a pointed look. "Well, since you're so opinionated, why don't you choose something for her, Gale? I'm sure your taste will be a perfect match." Gale's lips twisted into a smirk, his eyes glinting with an edge I had not seen before. "Fine," he said. "Why don't you go ahead to the next store, Mom, and look for some jewelry to match? I'll help Rachel find something fitting." Thinking this might bring us closer, Gale's mother agreed, leaving us alone. But the moment she was out of sight, Gale grabbed my arm roughly, pulling me along with a cold authority. "Come with me," he ordered, his grip tight. His tone sent a chill down my spine, but I didn't resist. He led me through racks of clothing, his eyes scanning the selections with a critical eye. He did not ask me what I liked or whether I was comfortable. Instead, he simply pointed to a series of dresses, signaling to the shop attendant to bring each one to the dressing room. The clothes were bold, revealing far more than anything I had ever worn, plunging necklines, barely their hems, and cuts that exposed more skin than they covered. I hesitated, looking down at the dresses piled in my arms. But Gale, I whispered, I don't think I can wear these. Not really my style. He sneered, an unkind glint in his eye. If you can't fit into these, then you, not fit to be my wife. My mother claimed you were better than Lily. Prove it to me. The mention of Lilian, his ex, struck a nerve. It was as if he was comparing every part of me to her, finding me wanting. Lily looks young and beautiful in everything she wears, he continued coolly. You, on the other hand, need to at least show some skin to keep my interest. The words cut deep, but I swallowed my pride and tried on the dresses. Each outfit felt more uncomfortable than the last, the fabric clinging too tightly or barely covering anything at all. When I finally managed to fit into a black Sabrina dress that hung just low enough to cover my chest and rode up high enough to expose most of my thigh, I stepped out, feeling vulnerable and out of place. Gale's eyes roamed over me, his lips curling into a satisfied smile. There we go. I suppose any woman can look good in a dress that leaves little to the imagination. He turned to the shop assistant, his tone dismissive. We'll take all of these, and find a few similar ones as well. Of course, sir, the assistant replied, heading to the cashier with the stack of clothes Gale had picked. Left alone for a moment, I instinctively tried to cover myself, feeling exposed and uncomfortable under Gale's gaze. He noticed, his smirk deepening as he stepped closer. If it's that uncomfortable, change into something else, but not the modest dress you wore before. I looked down at the options left in the dressing room, none of them any better. But everything you chose is even more revealing than this. That's exactly the point, he replied coolly, pinching my chin so that I looked at him. Pick something with less fabric, Rachel. I want everyone to see you. As I do. Up his grip tightened slightly, and I forced myself to nod, swallowing down my discomfort. Retreating into the dressing room, I sifted through the pile, settling on a crop top that at least covered my upper chest, paired with a high-waisted short skirt that provided a bit more modesty. When I emerged, Gale gave a slight nod of approval, satisfied enough to lead me to the cashier where he paid for everything. As we exited the store, we met up with his mother, who looked momentarily surprised by my revealing outfit. But before she could say anything, Gale cut in smoothly, "Doesn't Rachel look beautiful, Mom? I chose this style for her. It's what she likes, too. Isn't that right?" I forced a smile, nodding along. "Yes, thank you, Gale. It's lovely." Gale's mother smiled, though I could see a flicker of concern in her eyes. Trying to brush it off, she focused on choosing jewelry that would complement the outfit, placing necklaces and earrings on me until she found just the right ones. "There, perfect," she said, her warmth returning. "You look radiant, Rachel." But the truth was, I felt anything but radiant. That day was my first taste of how Gale saw me, as someone to mold to his tastes, someone who was expected to dress and behave the way he desired, with little thought for who I actually was. And from that moment, a small part of me had known we were never truly compatible. The memory of that humiliating shopping trip lingered bitterly in my mind. I could still feel the sting of Gale's words, his cold hands pulling me from one rack of revealing clothes to another, dismissing my discomfort as if it were nothing. Back then, I had not fully realized how heartless he truly was. But I had convinced myself that I could win him over, that I could somehow heal whatever ache he carried from his past with Lilian. I had been so determined to prove my worth, to make him see me as something more. So, I swallowed his cruel words, ignored the subtle bruises his grip left on my arm, and married him anyway. I molded myself into the image he wanted, dressing to his taste, pretending I did not mind the way people looked at me in the clothes he chose. In time, I even stopped noticing the discomfort, numbing myself to the shame. But then, looking back, I could hardly believe how naive I had been. I was such a fool, I whispered bitterly, shaking my head to clear away the thoughts. I focused again on the painting before me, immersing myself in its colors, textures, and the quiet freedom it gave me. Once it was complete, I began writing an explanation for it, a personal statement that would accompany my resume. I poured my thoughts and emotions onto the page, my words flowing as freely as my brushstrokes had. Time passed without me noticing, and somewhere along the way, I had drifted off to sleep at my desk, exhaustion overtaking me. A sudden knock at the door jolted me awake the next morning, so I rubbed my eyes, blinking away the sleepiness as I got up. Still disoriented, I opened the door without hesitation. But before I could fully process what was happening, two large men barged in, grabbing me firmly by the arms. The shock made my heart race, and instinctively, I tried to pull free. "No. What are you doing? Let me go, I shouted, struggling against their iron grips, my voice echoing in the quiet studio. Chapter 7. Stop fighting, one of the men growled, his voice cold and menacing. It'll be easier for you if you don't struggle. Easier? I spat, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and defiance. Who sent you? What do you want from me? The men said nothing, just dragged me from my studio, ignoring my protests, and pushed me into the familiar car waiting outside. My heart sank as I recognized it. That was Gale's doing. He had spent the entire night searching for me, determined to bring me back, to force me into his suffocating world. When we arrived, I was taken straight to my room and tossed onto the bed like luggage. Gale was already there, sitting on the sofa with his arms crossed, his face hardened. Good work, he muttered to his men. You, dismissed. As the door shut behind them, I glared at Gale, seething with anger. Before I could even sit up, he was on me, pinning me down, his hands around my throat, his thigh pressing between my legs, leaving me helpless. If you ever dare to block me again, he hissed, tightening his grip, just remember that I can do much worse too. You, Rachel, as long as you, in Providence, I'll always find you, so don't even think about leaving me again. I struggled against his hold, gasping for air. My hands gripped his wrists, trying to loosen his vice-like fingers as his smell of stale alcohol reached me. We, divorced, Gale, I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. Please, let me go, he smirked, his eyes flashing with a cruel satisfaction. Divorced? I never signed those papers, he sneered. Without warning, he forced his mouth onto mine, his actions filled with a sick sense of dominance. My strength drained, and I ceased to resist, defeated by his power and his unrelenting grasp. When he finally finished, he took his clothes, wearing it with an air of smugness. He tossed a shopping bag with a velvet jewelry box inside onto the bed beside me. I know what you, after, Rachel, he said coldly, nodding toward the box. I must have forgotten to get you your usual monthly gift. Here, that should be enough. I looked at the jewelry with hollow disdain. Did he think he could silence me with diamonds and trinkets, things he only offered to keep me quiet, to keep me bound? To him? Seeing my expression, he merely shrugged. I see the burn on your hand from the other night isn't as bad as you made it out to be. You, fine, so let's not have any more drama over it. Gale turned toward the door, pausing as he reached the threshold. Oh, and one more thing. If you ever leave this house again, I'll lock you up for good. As the door closed behind him, the walls felt like they were closing in too. I wanted to scream, but my throat was raw from both his grip and my own suppressed anger. A knock on the door startled me. It was the maid, timidly asking if I needed breakfast brought up. No, I'm not hungry. Thank you, I replied, my voice trembling. Once she left, I glanced at the jewelry box. Gale had left on the bed. It was still, wrapped in its sleek bag, untouched. With trembling fingers, I opened it, only to find a card inside. To Miss Lilian Bowen. My stomach twisted as I read the words. That gift, like everything else Gale offered, was not meant for me. With a surge of anger, I shut the box and took a steady breath, regaining my composure. A plan formed in my mind as I dressed, slipping into a fitted black outfit and donning sunglasses. I took the jewelry and brought it with me. As I walked through the hospital halls, looking every bit like a woman with a purpose. Dressed in black, carrying the white chrysanthemums, I felt like the Grim Reaper come to visit Lilian. When I entered her hospital room, she looked up, her expression turning to shock at the sight of me. Oh, so you, back, she said coolly, continuing her pedicure without even looking up. Gale spent all night looking for you, you know. Quite the trouble you caused. I forced a polite smile and stepped forward, setting the bouquet of white chrysanthemums on the table beside her. It didn't feel right not to visit you, replied, my voice laced with mock sweetness. Lilian's face twisted in irritation as she took in the flowers. How dare you bring white chrysanthemums here? Are you trying to imply something? I feigned innocence, covering my mouth in mock surprise. Oh, dear, my mistake. I thought Gale's renting of the entire hospital floor meant you were critical. I assumed the flowers would be fitting, for someone who might be on their way out of this world. But clearly, I was mistaken, since you looked quite healthy. I glanced at her meticulously pedicured toes. And you even found time to have a little pampering session. Lilian's face reddened with anger as she hurled the bouquet at me. And you wore all black on purpose, didn't you? She spat. I raised an eyebrow, smiling slightly. Oh, isn't this the trend in Paris? I thought a fashion designer like you would appreciate it. Fuming, Lilian glared at me, but before she could respond, I reached into my bag and handed her the jewelry box Gale had left. For me. I believe this was originally meant for you, I said with a cold smile. Gale must have mixed it up and given it to me by mistake, so I thought I should return it. Lilian's eyes flicked to the box, her lips curving into a smug smile. You poor thing, she sneered. I didn't want that little trinket. The carrot was too small, so Gale ordered me something better. She gestured to the bedside table, where an ornate jewelry box with an unmistakable brand lay in plain view. I glanced at it briefly, my chest tight but my face expressionless. Of course, I replied smoothly. How silly of me to assume otherwise. As I turned to leave, I could feel her gloating gaze on my back. She had won every battle, it seemed. She was the one Gale cherished, the one he chased after, while I was simply a shadow in their lives. As I held up the jewelry box, realization dawned on me with a bitter clarity. The jewelry Gale had given me was something Lilian had discarded, an afterthought. Oh, so it's trash, I muttered, anger simmering just beneath the surface. Lilian smiled smugly, her voice dripping with satisfaction. Yes, it is, Rachel. I am sorry you had to find out this way, but I only accept the best. It's a pity you can't be a little more grateful. I let out a low, sarcastic chuckle. No worries, Lilian. With a calm I did not feel, I held the jewelry box over the waste bin and was about to let it fall when the door suddenly opened. Gale strode in, his gaze flicking between us before locking onto the box in my hand, just above the trash. What are you doing? He demanded, his tone sharp with shock. I glanced back at him, unbothered. Throwing out the trash, I replied coolly, dropping the jewelry box into the bin with deliberate ease. Gale's eyes widened, his face turning red with anger as he spotted the jewelry he had handed me that morning. Don't you know how much I spent on that? He spat, his voice laced with fury. It's just a little money, isn't it? I shrugged, crossing my arms. Besides, you bought a bigger carrot for your ex. I turned and walked past him, feeling the weight of years of humiliation lifting, step by step. Gale reached out, as if ready to grab me, but Lilian suddenly let out a dramatic wail. Ow, it hurts, she cried, her voice loud and piercing. Chapter 8. With one last look back at the hospital, I whispered, this is the last time you'll see me like this, Gale. Next time, I'll be the one walking away. Then I left, returning to my studio to finish my work for my upcoming studies in Italy. My applications were complete, but I still needed a visa. That was when I remembered my passport was still with Gale's mother. I recalled that second year of marriage, when I had desperately wanted to leave. My professor had offered me a spot in a student exchange program in London, and I was ready to escape, believing I could never make Gale love me. I had done everything to win him over, followed his every whim, adapted myself to his tastes, and endured his coldness. But to him, I was just another servant, albeit one he indulged with monthly gifts. Whenever I had a tantrum over his treatment, at first, those gifts had softened me, making me think they were tokens of affection, that perhaps he cared for me in his own way. But the illusion shattered every time he stumbled into my room, drunk and cruel, whispering Lilian's name in the darkness. My heart had broken too many times to count. When I decided to join the student exchange, I kept it quiet. I applied for a passport and a visa on my own, but Gale's mother found out. Why a visa to London? She'd asked. Gale doesn't have any work there. I wanted to tell her the truth, that I was ready to end the marriage, that no matter how hard I tried, Gale would only ever see me as a shadow of Lilian. But before I could respond, Gale suddenly came and intervened with his usual icy charm. Actually, we're going to London for our honeymoon, he announced smoothly. We never had the chance to go after the wedding. His mother believed him without question, but Gale knew my intentions. After that, he tightened his grip on me even further, treating me with a brutal possessiveness whenever he drank, and in London, he barely allowed me to leave the bed. By the time we returned to the US, I was drained. Upon our return, he handed my passport to his mother, saying that I had entrusted it to her as a symbol of faith and trust in our marriage. In reality, it was just another way of keeping me trapped. As I sat there, putting the final touches on my application documents, I knew I would need to come up with a convincing reason to retrieve my passport from Gale's mother. But before I could think of a plan, my phone buzzed, startling me. It was Gale. Somehow, he had unblocked himself, forcing his way back into my life through the device in my hand. With a sigh, I picked up, saying nothing, just listening. Where are you? Gale's voice was impatient, bordering on annoyed. I told you I'd be back after my meeting. The meeting at the hospital with Lilian? I replied, my tone laced with sarcasm. Oh, here we go again. When will your tantrum end, Rachel? It's been days. He sighed, as if he were the one suffering. Anyway, stop playing games. Come home. We have to get ready for the Douglas Group's 50th anniversary gala tonight at the Manor. I'm not coming, I answered flatly, already exhausted by the conversation. Yes, you are. I've arranged everything. You have 10 minutes to get back here. Before I have to do something you won't like. His voice was a mixture of threat and control, something I had become all too familiar with. But then I realized that it could be my opportunity to speak with Gale's mother about retrieving my passport without arousing suspicion. Fine, I'll be home in 15 minutes, I said reluctantly. 10, he snapped, then hung up. Once home, I was whisked away by stylists who dressed me like a doll in a gown that oozed glamour yet felt painfully restrictive. The dress was a dark, satiny material with a plunging neckline and a high slit up the side, exposing more than I would have chosen. The slit rose high on my left thigh, and the neckline plunged daringly low, the whole look engineered to demand attention. When we finally arrived at the banquet, I noticed that Lilian was there too, dressed even more provocatively. She wore a tight, short dress with a corset-style bodice that emphasized her curves, her lips painted a deep red, catching the eye of everyone in the room. The guests around us murmured, their voices carrying whispers of Gale and Lilian's history. Is she back in town to win Mr. Douglas? Back? One woman speculated. They were inseparable back then. Honestly, she fits him better, another added, glancing my way. Each remark felt like a needle prick, reminding me of the invisible lines that separated me from him, that marked the place where Lilian lingered in his heart, no matter what I did. My heart sank at the suggestion. Although my burn had mostly healed, the scar was still there, a visible reminder of Lilian's recklessness and Gale's indifference. I could not bear to step into the spotlight, to expose myself to the judgmental stares of the Douglas family and the inevitable whispers. With a forced smile, I shook my head. I'm sorry, Mother. My hand is still sprained, and I don't think I can manage it tonight. Her face fell slightly, disappointment flashing in her eyes, but she nodded understandingly. I see, she said softly. Well, I'll have to ask someone else. Then, no worries, Mom, Gale interjected smoothly. I'll take care of it. Before I could respond, he turned on his heel and strode toward Lilian, who was surrounded by admirers. I watched as he leaned in to whisper something to her, and she nodded, her smile as dazzling as ever. Without hesitation, they walked together to the center of the room, where the large ceremonial cake awaited. Ladies and gentlemen, Gale announced, his voice commanding the attention of the crowd, it's an honor to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Douglas Group tonight. And to mark this special occasion, I'll be cutting the cake with someone very dear to all of us. He gestured toward Lilian, and she joined him with an elegance that seemed to dazzle everyone in the room. They stood side by side, their hands clasped together on the knife as they cut into the cake, smiling as camera flashes went off. Around me, the whispers began, sharp and cutting, each one like a dagger to my heart. Could it be they back together? One woman murmured. Will there be news of a divorce soon? Another speculated, her voice just loud enough for me to hear. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. Maybe Lilian returned to the U.S. to marry Mr. Douglas, a man said with a chuckle. Hearing that, the room seemed to shift. The people who had once tolerated me because of Gale's protection felt emboldened to show their true colors at that moment. These were the same socialites who had previously smiled politely at me, unwilling to confront the Cinderella-like story of a commoner becoming part of the Douglas family. But then, seeing Gale and Lilian together, they sensed that I was no longer under his shield of influence. For the first time, they cornered me. The well-mannered celebrities with perfect smiles for the cameras revealed their uglier sides. So, Cinderella has returned to the bottom, I see, one woman said. Mockingly, her voice dripping with disdain. Yeah, another added with a smirk. The caste difference was bound to cause problems. You can't expect someone like her to fit in. The comments were relentless. Some nudged me intentionally as they passed, forcing me to step back. Others shoved me with mock apologies, their laughter cruel and cutting. I retreated further and further until I felt my back press against something solid. Turning around, I realized too late that I had bumped into a table holding a towering champagne tower. It wobbled precariously before the entire thing came crashing down, glass shattering everywhere. The sharp sound silenced the room, and all eyes turned to me. Chapter 9. I winced as shards of glass cut into my hand and leg, blood trickling from the fresh wounds. Pain shot through me, but it was nothing compared to the humiliation I felt under the weight of their judgmental stares. Move aside, all of you. Gale's commanding voice broke through the murmurs. He pushed his way through the crowd, his face tense as he hurried toward me. For a fleeting moment, I thought he might finally care about my well-being. But before he could reach me, Lilian suddenly collapsed to the floor, clutching her stomach. "Ah, it hurts," she cried out dramatically, her voice piercing through the tense atmosphere. Within seconds, she fainted, her body falling backward. Gale immediately changed course, catching Lilian before her head hit the ground. He cradled her as if she were fragile porcelain, shouting for someone to call a doctor. I stood frozen, blood pooling around my feet. He did not even glance in my direction. Summoning all the strength I had left, I pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the pain. That was when Gale's mother appeared with several guards. Her face was pale with worry as she took in the sight of me. "Oh, Rachel, that must hurt a lot. Come with me," she said, gesturing to the guards to assist me. "Rest in my room. I've already called the family doctor to treat you." Once inside her room, the doctor treated my wounds while I sat silently, holding back tears. After he left, Gale's mother pulled a chair beside me, her concern evident in her. "Rachel, is there anything else that hurts?" she asked softly. I shook my head, struggling to find my voice. "It's not that," I began hesitantly, my voice barely above a whisper. "Eyes." Taking a deep breath, I finally gathered the courage to speak. "Mrs. Douglas, I've been offered a scholarship to study in Italy, and I've decided to accept it. I'll be leaving for a few years to pursue my master's degree." Her expression shifted, a mixture of surprise and sadness crossing her face. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner," I continued, my voice trembling. "But this is something I've dreamed of for so long." My words faltered as tears welled up in my eyes. There was so much more I wanted to say, so many truths I had hidden for too long. But before I could continue, she pulled me into a gentle hug. "You don't have to say it," she whispered. "I know you must be sad to see Lilian return and even sadder to see Gale's attention shift back to her. Her understanding broke something inside me, and I began to cry. She held me tighter. I didn't expect Lilian to be so bold, chasing Gale like this. "It's shameless. And Gale," she sighed deeply, "he should know better. I can't imagine how disappointed you must be." I nodded silently, unable to stop the tears streaming down my face. She pulled back and looked at me with a soft smile. "Fine then. If this is what you want, go. Maybe a few years in Italy will give you the peace you need. Just remember, Rachel, I'm always here to support you. I'll be waiting to see the amazing work you create while you away." Her kindness overwhelmed me. I managed a small nod, my gratitude too immense to put into words. "Oh, right," she added as if remembering something important. "You want me to keep your passport, but I think it's time I gave it back. You're free now, Rachel. Even if Gale is my son, it's clear that I can't defend him anymore." She handed me my passport, and for the first time, I felt like I could truly breathe. "Thank you," I whispered, clutching the small book like a lifeline. As I left her room, Grit approached me with a small package. "This is medicine. Gale asked me to give you," she said. Bluntly, I didn't want to, but after the steakhouse incident, I felt a little guilty. "Thanks," I replied curtly. But then I said again before going to enter the taxi. "Grit, I will divorce him and leave anyway. So, please tell him to sign it to make our divorce official." Hearing that, Grit's blank face immediately brightened. "Oh, congratulations then. I will tell him later about your message." She hesitated, then added, I think it's good that you're leaving. You don't need to worry about being my sister-in-law anymore." I blinked at her, surprised. "Well, you got your wish." "Good," she said simply. I nodded and walked away, my heart lighter than it had been in years. That night, I took my belongings and arranged everything with Gale's mother to ensure my departure was swift and seamless. When I arrived at the airport, I discarded my phone number's card, cutting the final ties that bound me to Gale and his world. Chapter 10. When I arrived at the airport, I discarded my phone number's card, cutting the final ties that bound me to Gale and his world. Once in Italy, I embraced the new chapter of my life, immersing myself in my studies and adapting to my new surroundings. It was not until days later that Gale realized I was gone. Returning from a business trip, he found his closet nearly empty, save for the gifts he had given me, all left behind. He tried calling me, but my number was disconnected. Panicking, he went to my studio, only to discover it had been sold and belonged to someone else. Gale's frustration had reached its peak as his search for me yielded no results. He had spread his men across Providence, but I was nowhere to be found. The realization that I had truly disappeared gnawed at him, and his irritation boiled over into every interaction. Watching her brother pace angrily, Grit, ever the sarcastic sibling, finally broke the tense silence. "Why are you so worked up? The last time I saw Rachel, she proudly said you should hurry up and sign the divorce papers. You should be happy about it, right?" Gale froze mid-step, his eyes narrowing as he turned to her. His voice was sharp, louder than usual. "When did she say that?" Grit blinked, startled by his tone. "After the banquet," she stammered, her sarcasm quickly replaced by unease at the intensity in his expression. His jaw clenched as her words sank in. That was when it hit him. I was not bluffing about the divorce. I had meant every word. After hearing the mention of the divorce papers from his sister, Gale stormed into his study. The memory of the document I had left behind came rushing back, the envelope he had carelessly tossed into a drawer without even opening. At the time, Gale had assumed it was just an empty threat. The day I gave him those papers was the same day he rented the entire hospital floor for Lilian after the steakhouse incident. Gale believed I was merely upset that he had ignored me and left me behind with Grit that night. He saw my actions as nothing more than childish defiance, the silent treatment I occasionally used to protest his indifference. Frustrated by my absence and refusal to return home for our usual dinner ritual, Gale had sought me out and dragged me back by force. But when he found me, his reaction was not love, it was pure obsession. He poured all his anger and frustration into controlling me, acting as though my defiance was an insult to his authority rather than an expression of my pain. In truth, our relationship had always been a toxic arrangement. I had long since stopped crying when Gale used me to vent his frustrations. Instead, I fought back, matching his energy until he was too exhausted to continue. If he gave me gifts to appease me, I would first refuse them hesitantly, but later, I would boldly ask for the things I wanted, further solidifying his belief that I was a gold digger. To him, I was nothing more than a maid who satisfied his desires. To me, he was merely a means to an end, a provider who kept me trapped in a gilded cage. That was the reality of us. So, when Gale finally opened the file I left for him, expecting blank pages or a joke, he was stunned to find a fully prepared divorce agreement, ready to be submitted to the court with just his signature. Fury and disbelief consumed him as he slammed the papers onto his desk. "Where are you, Rachel?" he muttered, gripping his head in frustration. His mind raced, trying to think of where I might have gone. Then, he remembered the orphanage where I had grown up. Without wasting any more time, Gale grabbed his car keys and sped to the orphanage. When he arrived, he saw children playing in the yard, their laughter echoing through the air. But I wasn't among them. Determined, Gale headed toward the building, intending to search every room if necessary. Just as he reached the entrance, a small boy ran into him, bouncing off his frame and landing on the ground with a thud. The boy's eyes welled up with tears, and he began to cry loudly. Gale scowled, crouching down reluctantly. "Next time, watch where you going. Kids like you die first because they careless." The boy's cries grew louder at Gale's harsh words, and the other children glared at him disapprovingly. Realizing he had worsened the situation, Gale sighed heavily. "Stop crying. I'll buy you whatever you want, just stop." The boy sniffled and paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes, just name it," Gale replied impatiently. The boy pointed at an ice cream truck passing by. "I want ice cream, Uncle." "That's all?" Gale asked, incredulous. "I could buy the whole company if you want." A few minutes later, the orphanage yard was filled with happy children enjoying ice cream from the truck Gale had purchased on a whim. Gale sat on a nearby bench, his frustration simmering as he watched the kids play. The boy, noticing Gale's sour expression, approached him cautiously. "Uncle, you want ice cream too?" "No, I don't, Gale replied curtly. The boy sighed, tilting his head in thought. Why do grown-ups always look so gloomy? My older sister was like that too, a few days ago. Gale's ears perked up at the mention of a sister. "Your sister? Who's that?" The boy grinned. "Sister Rachel." Hearing my name, Gale leaned forward, his interest piqued. What was she upset about? "Do you know?" The boy licked his ice cream thoughtfully. "She said she was going far away and was sad because she would miss Providence." "Do you know where she went?" Gale pressed urgently. The boy shook his head. "But I think our mother knows." Without hesitation, Gale strode toward the building, his steps purposeful. She greeted him with a calm demeanor, her wisdom etched into her gentle smile. "Where is Rachel?" Gale demanded. "I know you know where she went." She folded her hands and looked at him with a serene expression. "Wherever Rachel is, Mr. Douglas, she's fine. You don't need to worry about her." Gale's jaw tightened, his frustration barely contained. "Please, tell me where she is. I just need to talk to her." But she shook her head. "She deserves her freedom, Mr. Douglas. It's not my place to interfere." Defeated, Gale left the orphanage with clenched fists and a storm of emotions swirling in his chest. His frustration mounting as he pieced the situation together. His thoughts kept circling back to one crucial detail: I could not leave the country without my passport, and his mother had been keeping it. So, if I had managed to leave, it could only mean one thing: his mother had given it to me. But then another thought struck him. He had invited me to the main manor for the anniversary banquet just the days before. Had she used that as her opportunity to retrieve the passport? He muttered. The possibility gnawed at him, and he decided there was only one way to find out. Without wasting another moment, Gale drove to his mother's house, each turn of the wheel a vent for his growing frustration. By the time he stormed into her sitting room, he was barely keeping his composure. "Mom," he said sharply, his voice cutting through the tranquil atmosphere. "Did you give Rachel her passport?" His mother, seated comfortably with a cup of tea in hand, looked up at him, calm as ever. "Yes, I did," she replied without hesitation, her tone steady. "Why would you do that?" Gale demanded, his voice rising. Her sharp gaze met his, filled with subtle disapproval that he was too flustered to notice. "Why?" she echoed, her voice tinged with incredulity. The reason she left, Gale. Don't act surprised now." Her words hit him like a slap, and he took a step closer, his emotions spilling out in frustration. "But she asked me for a divorce before she left, Mom. Did she tell you that?" His mother's expression shifted, the calm demeanor faltering as a flicker of shock crossed her face. "What?" she said slowly, her voice softening with disbelief. "Divorce?" Gale nodded stiffly, his jaw tightening. "She didn't tell you, did she? She tricked you into giving her the passport. That's why I'm trying to find her." His mother's eyes filled with sorrow as she processed his words. "She indeed did not tell me, Gale," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "At first, I thought she just needed some space, now I know the real reason. But I could understand that." Gale's expression darkened, frustration burning in his chest. "You should discuss it with me first, Mom," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. His mother put down her teacup carefully, her movements deliberate as she looked at him intently. "Gale, tell me honestly," she said, her tone softer but probing. "Why are you so desperate to find her? Why are you running all over Providence, chasing after her? Do you love her?" Chapter 11. The question struck him like a blow. For a moment, Gale opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion. Did he love her? Could he even answer that truthfully? He started, but his voice faltered. His mother waited, her gaze steady but laced with disappointment. "You don't even know, do you?" she said quietly, shaking her head. Gale stood frozen, his mother's words echoing in his mind like a resounding gong. He had always believed his marriage, flawed as it was, had some level of mutual commitment. But when faced with the gratitude agreement, everything he thought he knew crumbled before him. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling with disbelief, "what do you mean by this? Are you saying Rachel married me not out of love but obligation?" His mother's eyes softened with a mixture of guilt and resignation. "Yes, Gale. 4 years ago, when Lilian left you, you were a mess. You wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, and spent your free time drowning yourself in alcohol. I watched as you became a shell of the man you once were. I couldn't bear it anymore." She sighed, taking a seat as if the weight of her confession was too much to stand under. "When I met Rachel, I saw her potential. She was kind, talented, and grounded, everything I thought you needed in your life. So, I asked her to come into your life, thinking she might be able to bring you back from the brink." Gale remained silent, his hands clutching the gratitude agreement. "But I didn't stop there," she continued. "I knew how hesitant she was about marrying someone she barely knew, especially under such circumstances. So, I made her an offer. I promised to pay for her studies at RISD if she agreed to marry you. That was all she asked for, her education and a chance to pursue her dream." "Her dream?" Gale repeated, his voice hollow. "Yes, Rachel never wanted wealth or luxury. She just wanted to paint, to grow as an artist. And in return, she agreed to be your wife, not because she loved you, but because she felt indebted to me for giving her the opportunity. Gale's mind reeled. And you never told me? For 4 years, you let me believe that she. His voice trailed off as anger surged within him. This was all you're doing. You manipulated her into this. His mother looked at him steadily. Yes, Gale, I did, and I take full responsibility for it. But I truly believed that, over time, love could grow between the two of you. I was wrong. All I managed to do was trap a good woman in a loveless marriage, hoping it would fix you. And instead, it only hurt her. Gale shook his head, pacing the room. No, that's not the full story. Rachel could have left any time if she really wanted to. She chose to stay, his mother said firmly. I am asking you to let her go. For her sake and yours. You've taken so much from her already. If you can't give her love, at least give her the freedom to find it elsewhere. But Gale wasn't ready to accept it. His chest tightened with a mix of desperation and defiance. No, I won't let this end like this. I'll find her, and when I do, I'll show her that this marriage isn't over. Not until I say it is. Gale left his mother's house frustrated, his jaw clenched as he got into his car. His mother's refusal to help him find Rachel confirmed his worst fear. She was no longer in Providence, and his mother had played a role in making it happen. Gripping the steering wheel tightly, Gale immediately called his people. Check the outbound flights from Providence in the last few days. Focus on any passenger named Rachel Douglas or Rachel Perkins. Let me know the moment you have any leads. Yes, Mr. Douglas, came the prompt reply. But just as he hung up, his phone buzzed again. Lilian's name flashed on the screen. He answered swiftly, concern creeping into his voice as he heard her panicked breathing. Gale, please help me, Lilian cried, her voice trembling. What happened, Lilian? Gale asked sharply, his body tensing. It's my ex-husband. He found me, she whispered, her words barely audible over the chaos in the background. He's downstairs in the apartment lobby, demanding to see me. Gale's mind was suddenly flooded with memories of Lilian and the tumultuous events that had led her back to Providence. He remembered how she had left for Paris not just for her career, but because her parents had arranged her marriage to Brian Watson, the son of a powerful family friend. Brian had propelled Lilian into the spotlight as a renowned fashion designer, using his wealth and connections to elevate her career. But behind closed doors, their marriage was anything but glamorous. After 4 years, Lilian had filed for divorce, citing domestic violence. The scandal had driven her back to Providence, away from the man who had built her career but shattered her spirit. I'll be there in a minute, Gale said. Firmly, snapping back to the present. Don't let anyone into your penthouse. Lock the doors and stay inside. Do you understand? Yes, Lilian replied, her voice wavering. Please be careful, Gale. Without hesitation, Gale turned his car around, causing a chorus of honks from the cars around him. Ignoring them, he pressed down on the gas, weaving through traffic with singular focus. When he reached the hotel, Gale tossed his car keys to the valet and rushed into the lobby. He spotted a tall, broad-shouldered man attempting to force his way into the elevator while 2 security guards struggled to restrain him. It was Brian Watson, Lilian's ex-husband. Mr. Douglas, we're sorry for the disturbance, one of the staff members said, recognizing Gale. At the mention of his name, Brian turned, his eyes narrowing as he sized Gale up. Ah, so you, Gale Douglas? Yes, I am, Gale replied coolly, his sharp tone cutting through the tension in the air. Rather than causing a scene, why don't we handle this like professionals? Let's talk, Mr. Watson. The guards hesitated, still holding onto Brian's arms, but Gale signaled them to release him. Let's take this to the bar, Gale suggested, his voice steady but authoritative. Brian, though bristling with hostility, followed Gale's lead. The 2 men walked into the apartment bar, each carrying an air of dominance that made the space feel smaller. Once seated, Brian ordered a glass of high-proof whiskey, taking a long sip before glaring at Gale. So, you, the one, huh? Lilian's lover? The man who lured her away from me and back to Providence? Gale did not flinch. His voice was calm but edged with steel. As her ex-husband, Mr. Watson, you have no claim over her anymore. Whatever she chooses to do now is none of your concern. Brian's jaw tightened, his grip on the whiskey glass firm. None of my concern? She's still my wife since we have not divorced yet. Besides, I built her career, made her who she is today. But then she left me like I'm nothing. Lilian didn't leave you, Brian. She escaped, Gale replied coldly, his eyes locked on Brian's. You don't own her. And you never will again. Brian's knuckles whitened as he set the glass down forcefully. Big words for a man whose wife also walked away from him, he spat, his words hitting Gale like a punch to the gut. Chapter 12. The tension between them thickened as Gale absorbed the jab. He knew Brian was no ordinary opponent. He was calculated, ruthless, and unafraid to exploit personal vulnerabilities. You don't know anything about my wife, Gale said, his voice low but firm. Oh, don't I? Brian sneered. It's all over your face, Gale. You, desperate, just like I was. You think you can control people like Lilian or Rachel, but they slip through your fingers, don't they? Gale's jaw tightened, but he refused to let Brian see the cracks forming in his composure. This conversation is over, Mr. Watson, he said, standing abruptly. You have no reason to be here, and if you try to force your way back into Lilian's life, I'll make sure you regret it. Brian smirked, leaning back in his seat. Let's see how long you can keep playing the knight in shining armor, Gale. Providence might be your playground, but even kings fall. Ignoring the taunt, Gale turned and left the bar. As he walked out, he directly went to Lilian's penthouse after confirming to the guards to never let Brian get near the apartment. Gale entered Lilian's penthouse, calling out softly, Lily, it's me. The silence in the place was unsettling, his voice echoing slightly through the luxurious space. He scanned the room, his senses on high alert, until Lilian finally emerged from her bedroom. The moment she saw him, she ran to him, her face pale and tear-streaked. Throwing her arms around him, she sobbed into his chest. Gale, I was so afraid. I thought Brian would break through the defenses this time. Gale wrapped his arms around her protectively, his voice firm as he reassured her. Don't worry, Lilian, I've tightened security. Your husband won't be able to get near you now. While Gale was comforting Lilian in Providence, I was on the other side of the world, fully immersing myself in my new life. I had started an Italian language course, wanting to familiarize myself with the local culture and communicate more fluently with my future classmates. My roommate, a lively woman from London, joined me in the course. After class, we often hung out at a quaint cafe near the dorm, practicing the language and exchanging stories. As we sipped our coffee, I received a notification on my phone, a new email. The sender's name made my brows furrowed in confusion. It was Brian Watson. I knew of him, of course, since he was Lilian's ex-husband. But why was he reaching out to me? Curious, I opened the email. Brian. Hello, Rachel, I know you must be confused about receiving this message from me, but as Lilian's husband, I want to discuss something important. It's come to my attention that Lilian is reconnecting with her ex, Gale, who happens to be your husband or ex-husband, given your intentions to divorce him. I'm writing to inform you of my plan to publicize certain details about Gale and Lilian's relationship, which may inevitably involve you. I seek your permission to proceed. I assure you, I am not asking for your help, only your consent. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a soft breath. His words stirred mixed feelings, but ultimately, I felt detached from the drama. After a moment's thought, I replied curtly, it's up to you. I don't care about Gale anymore. His response was immediate, thank you. I stared at the screen for a moment before closing the email. My life was no longer entangled with Gale or Lilian, and whatever fallout came from Brian's actions was not my concern. Whether Lilian had lied about her divorce or Brian was manipulating the situation did not matter to me anymore. Hey, Rachel, my roommate interrupted my thoughts, a mischievous smile on her face. What do you think about blind dates? Italian men seem so charming. I laughed lightly, shaking my head. It's an interesting idea, but no thanks. I'm focused on my studies for now. She pouted playfully. Oh, come on. Sometimes romance can be inspiring for artists. Are you sure you don't want to try? I'll think about it if you find someone absolutely perfect, I teased. She grinned. Challenge accepted. As I sipped my espresso, I let my gaze wander. The men in Italy certainly had a certain charm, but I was not ready for romance. My heart needed time to heal from the scars Gale had left behind. Meanwhile, back in Providence, the storm that Brian had promised began to brew. Headlines about his arrival spread like wildfire. Lilian's ex-husband returns to Providence, hoping to reconcile and withdraw a divorce agreement. The articles painted a picture of Brian as a scorned lover, desperate to win Lilian back. Stories circulated about how he had spent the night waiting outside her boutique, only to leave empty-handed. Reports also detailed his grand gestures, including a bouquet of 100 roses that Lilian had rejected. Public opinion began to shift. Some questioned the truth behind Lilian's claims of domestic violence. Could it be that Lilian is simply tired of Brian? If I were Lilian, I'd run straight to Brian and kiss him for those roses. Others turned their scrutiny toward Gale. Where has Mr. Douglas's wife been since Lilian returned? Is Lilian the third wheel in Mr. Douglas's marriage? Mr. Douglas, why chase someone else's wife when you already have one? The mounting speculation began to tarnish Gale's reputation. Even his father, the ever-proud patriarch of the Douglas family, issued a stern warning. Straighten this out, Gale. You've dragged the family name through the mud long enough. The pressure was palpable. Gale felt cornered, his life unraveling before his eyes. The situation with Lilian had not only jeopardized his personal life but also his professional reputation. The day of the press conference arrived, and the room was packed with reporters, their cameras and recorders ready to capture every word and gesture. Gale sat in the center of the stage, his expression calm and composed, though his mind was a whirlwind of frustration and uncertainty. Next to him sat Lilian, poised and elegant as ever, radiating confidence despite the storm of controversy surrounding her. Gale cleared his throat and leaned into the microphone. Thank you all for being here today, he began, his voice firm but measured. I want to address the rumors that have been circulating recently regarding my personal life and my connection to Lilian Bowen. Firstly, I'd like to clarify that my wife and I are still on good terms. She has been focusing on her studies, which is why she hasn't been seen in public as often. The rumors suggesting a separation or conflict between us are baseless. As for Lilian, let me be clear. She is not, and never has been, a third person in my marriage. Our relationship is strictly platonic. We are close friends who support each other in times of need, nothing more. His words were direct and left no room for questions. Gale had deliberately chosen to avoid a Q&A session, knowing that opening the floor to the press would invite speculation and probing into areas he was not prepared to discuss. With his part done, Gale stepped back and gestured for Lilian to take the microphone. She adjusted it with practiced ease, her polished demeanor hiding any nerves she might have felt. Thank you, Gale, she began, her voice smooth and apologetic. First, I want to express my regret for the inconvenience and confusion caused by my presence here in Providence. I understand that my return has stirred speculation, and for that, I deeply apologize. Gale nodded along, satisfied so far. But then, her tone shifted slightly, and the words that followed made him freeze. My husband and I, she continued, have indeed been in the process of divorce mediation. However, recently, I finally had the chance to meet Brian again and have an honest conversation about our issues. Gale's eyes widened in surprise, his composure faltering for the first time, since he had no idea that was coming. Chapter 13. As Hazel mentioned Lilian's name, my chest tightened. The name I had tried so hard to forget echoed in my mind, dragging along memories I had buried deep. I steadied my breath and forced myself to maintain a neutral expression, though it was clear Hazel had noticed my discomfort. I wasn't sure if I should bring it up, she said cautiously. I didn't want to upset you, but I thought you should know, Lilian has been talking about you recently. A lump formed in my throat, but I managed to ask, what does she want? Hazel hesitated, as if weighing how much she should reveal. Well, we got to know each other better because we're both from Providence, and I used to visit her boutique while studying in Paris. The mention of Paris brought a faint smile to my lips. Hazel had always been ambitious, determined to make a name for herself. After graduating from high school, she earned a prestigious scholarship to a fashion school in Paris. Her success was no surprise. Hazel had been brilliant and driven even as a child at the orphanage. I nodded, urging her to continue. She didn't know you were Gale's wife at first, Hazel began, her tone gentle. She thought Gale was single when she came back. Once she found out, she felt terrible about how things unfolded and wanted to apologize to you. Her words hung in the air. My fingers tightened around my cup as I processed what Hazel had said. Apologize? I wanted to scoff at the idea, but something in Hazel's voice made me pause. What else did she say? I asked cautiously. Hazel sighed. She told me about her miscarriage and the challenges she faced in her marriage. I think she came back to Providence because she was desperate for familiarity, for something that reminded her of happier times. She truly regrets the way things turned out. I remained silent, my emotions churning. On one hand, I could understand why Lilian might have been lost and searching for solace. On the other, she had knowingly walked into my marriage and, despite discovering the truth, had not stepped back immediately. Hazel, I began carefully, I know you trying to mediate this, and I appreciate it. But I can't just forgive her overnight. Let time do its work. Maybe someday. Hazel nodded empathetically. Of course. I understand. Lilian made mistakes, but I also know it was not entirely her fault. Gale let her in. If Gale had valued our marriage, he would have set boundaries with Lilian. Instead, he welcomed her back with open arms. As I mulled over my thoughts, an image of Gale's face at the press conference came to mind, the look of heartbreak when Lilian chose Brian. That moment had made one thing clear, I had never been the woman in his heart. I had been a placeholder, a substitute for the love he had lost. Hazel's voice broke through my reverie. Rachel, are you okay? Before I could answer, Louise returned, his cheerful presence breaking the tension. Why do you both look so serious? What's going on? Hazel quickly covered, flashing a playful smile. Oh, nothing, just debating the best places to go shopping. You know how women are, honey. I played along, smirking. Yeah, we get very serious about these things. Men like you wouldn't understand. Louise chuckled, shaking his head at us. The atmosphere lightened, and from that day on, Hazel seemed to understand that I did not want to talk about Lilian anymore. A few months later, I received an exciting opportunity. One of my professors, who had often praised my work, invited me to display my paintings at an upcoming art exhibition. Thrilled, I threw myself into preparing my pieces, working tirelessly to perfect each one. Of course, I did not forget to invite Hazel and Louise to the event. When they arrived, Louise was effusive in his praise. Rachel, this is incredible. I'll be buying a few for my office, no question. Thank you, I said, my cheeks flushing with pride. Hazel chimed in, talking excitedly about her own final project. We spent the evening discussing art, dreams, and the paths that had brought us to Italy. Though we often spoke about the future, there was one topic I avoided. It was my inevitable return to Providence after graduation. The thought of going back to a city filled with painful memories and the shadow of Gale weighed heavily on me. One evening, as we chatted over coffee, Louise offered a suggestion. Why not come live with us at Kim Manor? My parents adore you. They've been fans of your work for years. They'd be thrilled to have you there, and there's a studio you can use for painting. Hazel nodded enthusiastically. Yes, it would be perfect. And don't worry about running into Gale. You can focus on your work and take your time figuring things out. Their offer was generous, and their sincerity touched me. While I had not made a decision yet, their support reminded me that I was not alone. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the road ahead. My life was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I was building, a future shaped by freedom, creativity, and the people who truly cared for me. I'm so happy to have both of you in my life, I said, my voice warm with gratitude. But I might need some time to think about it. Life in Italy has been so peaceful. For me, and I'm not sure I'm ready to leave that behind just yet. Hazel reached over and squeezed my hand gently. Of course, Rachel, take your time. We still have a few months until graduation, so there's no rush. I nodded, grateful for her understanding. The weeks passed quickly as graduation approached, and I found myself cherishing every moment in Italy. Then, the day before our graduation, Hazel and I decided to treat ourselves to a day at the salon. While flipping through magazines and waiting for our hair treatments, I noticed a news broadcast on the television. The headline caught my attention immediately. Chapter 14. I stared at the email for a moment, conflicted. It had been 6 months since the press conference and my quiet departure from Providence. I had spent that time focusing on my studies, immersing myself in my art, and savoring the freedom that came with leaving my past behind. Gale's struggles, as much as many described them with urgency, felt like another life entirely, one I had no intention of revisiting. Still, Minnie was my friend, and I did not want to leave her hanging. With a sigh, I started typing my reply. Rachel, first of all, sorry for disappearing on you. But, please keep this between us. I'm in Italy, continuing my master's degree. Life here is peaceful and productive, and I'm doing well. I hope you're doing great too. As for Gale, I don't care about his condition anymore. That chapter of my life is closed, and I'm not looking back. Let him deal with his problems on his own. After hitting send, I set my phone down and exhaled deeply, letting the tension ease from my shoulders. Minnie's email had stirred emotions I thought I had buried long ago, but I was not going to let Gale's downfall disrupt the life I was building. It was not my job to fix him, nor did I have any obligation to pity the man who had taken so much from me. I then gave Minnie my new number, and we resumed chatting sporadically. Over time, she stopped mentioning Gale, sensing that I had no interest in discussing him. Life continued peacefully, and a year into my studies, I found myself at the city library during a break. The cool air and the quiet hum of activity were soothing as I wandered between the tall shelves, looking for a particular book. As I reached for the book, another hand reached out simultaneously, brushing against mine. Surprised, I looked up to find a familiar face, a face from my childhood that immediately brought a smile to my lips. The man quickly pulled his hand back and smiled apologetically. "Oh, sorry, you can have it first." I grabbed the book and was about to thank him when recognition sparked in his eyes. "Rachel?" he asked, his voice loud enough to make heads turn. I winced, glancing around at the people glaring in our direction. "Shush, don't be so noisy in the library." Then I took a closer look at him. "So, you really are Louise?" Louise Kim, my childhood sweetheart from the orphanage, nodded enthusiastically. "It's me. I can't believe I found you." "Here," he whispered this time, a grin spreading across his face. I could not help but giggle softly. The excitement bubbling within me mirrored his, but I tried to keep my composure. Louise had always been special to me, kind, cheerful, and someone who had left a lasting impression on my heart. "How about we catch up over coffee?" he suggested eagerly. "There's a cafe just next to the library." "Sure," I agreed with a smile. "Let me borrow this book first." After checking out the book, we headed to the cafe where I often spent time reading or working on assignments. The atmosphere was cozy and familiar, yet something about being there with Louise felt new and exciting. Over cups of espresso, the conversation flowed easily. Louise was as charming and animated as ever, his cheerful demeanor lighting up the room. "I never thought I'd see you here in Italy," he said, stirring his coffee. "Same here," I replied, sipping mine. "The last I heard, you were busy helping your family's business." Louise chuckled. "Still I'm living here temporarily to help expand the business in Italy. Plus," he hesitated, his eyes softening, "I'm accompanying my wife, who's studying here as well." The word wife hit me like a small jolt. I managed to keep my composure, though my heart sank slightly. Of course, Louise, who was handsome, kind, and successful, would be married by the time. "Oh, I see. Congratulations," I said, masking my disappointment with a polite smile. "I'm here for my master's degree, so it looks like we both have busy schedules." Louise leaned back, smiling warmly. "That's amazing. I've always known you were destined for great things. I still remember your art exhibition back in Providence, it was incredible. You have to invite me to your next one." His words warmed me, though they brought a bittersweet memory of the time when I hoped for similar praise from Gale. I shook the thought away, focusing on Louise. "Of course, I'll invite you and your wife too," I said lightly. "Speaking of which, why didn't you invite me to your wedding?" Louise laughed. "It was a small ceremony. Just us and a priest. We met here in Italy, and we didn't see the need for a big celebration." "Still, I would have loved to see you tie the knot," I teased. "So, who's the lucky lady?" "You actually know her," he replied with a grin, pulling out his phone. "And there's more, I'll show you a picture of our baby too." "Baby?" I asked in surprise. "Yeah," he said proudly. "She was already pregnant when we got married. She's the most precious thing in the world to me." Hearing those words, I felt a pang of sadness. When I had been pregnant, I had longed for Gale to say something similar. Instead, he had asked me to abort the baby, treating the pregnancy as an inconvenience rather than a blessing. But those memories belonged to the past. Seeing Louise's happiness reminded me of the love and family I still hoped to find one day. As Louise handed me his phone, I stared at the photo of Louise, his wife, and their baby. A rush of warmth filled me. Louise had not only found happiness but had married his childhood sweetheart, Hazel Wilson. Memories of our time together at the orphanage came flooding back. "Is that Hazel?" I asked, my enthusiasm bubbling over. "Yes," Louise replied with a proud smile. "You still remember her. I was just as surprised when I met her here in Italy last year. Turns out she got a scholarship to study fashion design and will be graduating next year." I leaned back in my chair, a sense of nostalgia washing over me. "So, you two have only known each other again for a year and decided to get married?" "That's amazing." Louise nodded, his smile widening. Hee. "Well, you know, since the three of us were raised in the orphanage, I didn't want my child to go through the same thing. I wanted him to have a complete family, with both parents together, before he was born. That's beautiful, Louise, I said softly, truly moved by his words. How about this? Louise suggested, his eyes lighting up. Why don't you come to my apartment later? Hazel will be so happy to see you too. I hesitated briefly. Maybe later. I still have some things to take care of. But I promise I'll visit when I have time. Deal, he said, grinning. We exchanged numbers before parting ways, promising to stay in touch. As I walked away, I could not help but reflect on how much had changed since our orphanage days. Of all the children who had grown up with us, Louise was undoubtedly the luckiest. Adopted by a wealthy family, he was not only loved but also given the opportunity to inherit and expand their family business. Hazel, like me, had always relied on scholarships to further her education, though she had never received additional support like I had from Mrs. Gale. Despite our different paths, all three of us had managed to carve out our own successes. It filled me with a quiet sense of pride and joy to see them thriving. A month later, true to my promise, I finally found the time to visit their apartment. Hazel greeted me at the door with a warm smile that instantly melted any awkwardness. Rachel, she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. It's been so long. I was so excited when Louise told me you two met. I've been feeling a little lonely here. Louise, cradling their baby in his arms, pouted playfully. So, I'm not enough company for you? Hazel laughed, playfully swatting his arm. You're my husband, Louise, but I also need female friends, you know. I giggled at their playful banter, feeling at ease in their company. The warmth in their home was palpable, filled with love and laughter. We sat down for lunch together, and I could not help but admire how happy and harmonious their little family seemed. Seeing them together, I realized how much I longed for a love story like theirs, a partnership built on mutual respect, understanding, and genuine affection. But life had dealt me a different hand, and while I had made peace with my path, there was still a quiet yearning in my heart. Over lunch, Hazel shared her excitement about her studies. I'm studying fashion design, and I'll be graduating around the same time as you, Rachel. That's wonderful, I said, my enthusiasm was genuine. Hazel's eyes lit up with an idea. You know, we should collaborate for our final projects. Maybe we can combine your art and my designs for an exhibition. I clapped my hands together, thrilled by the idea. That's a brilliant idea, Hazel. I'd love to work with you on this. As Louise carried their baby to the bedroom to put her down for a nap, Hazel leaned closer to me, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Rachel, she said hesitantly, as though unsure whether to continue. There's something I've been meaning to tell you. I tilted my head, curious. What is it? She took a deep breath, her voice soft but steady. It is about Lilian. Chapter 15. Slowly, I turned around and found myself face to face with Grit. What doing here? She asked, her tone a mixture of surprise and something unspoken, her eyes narrowing slightly. I met her gaze, keeping my voice steady. I came to see your mother. She's been like a mother to me, and I wanted to make sure she was okay. Grit tilted her head, her expression unreadable. I see. There was an awkward pause. The weight of unsaid things lingered between us, but Grit eventually stepped aside, motioning toward the door. Go on, she said quietly, her voice almost gentle. She's waiting for you. I hesitated for a moment, unsure if she would say anything else. When she did not, I walked past her and opened the door to the VIP room. Gale's mother looked up from her hospital bed, her face lighting up with a radiant smile the moment our eyes met. Rachel, she said warmly, her voice brimming with affection. You, here. I rushed to her side, taking her frail hand in mine. Of course, I'm here. How are you feeling? She squeezed my hand gently, her warmth and kindness filling the room. Much better now that you, here, my dear. The sight of her, despite her weakened state, brought a sense of relief. She was still the strong, maternal figure I had always admired. I've missed you, I admitted softly. I've missed you too, Rachel. Her voice cracked slightly, betraying her emotions. We spoke for a while, reminiscing about the past and catching up on what little I could share about my life in Italy. For that moment, it felt as though no time had passed, and the tension from the past melted away. As I stood to leave, I glanced around but noticed that Grit was nowhere to be found. A small part of me hoped she would not tell Gale about my visit. Yet, I steeled myself for whatever might come. I had already returned to Providence, and there was no running away again. Louise and Hazel were waiting for me at Kim Manor, along with Louise's parents. The warm reception I received as I walked through the doors made me feel at home. Thank you for letting me stay here temporarily, I said graciously. Temporarily? Rachel, you're welcome to stay as long as you'd like, Mrs. Kim said, smiling warmly. Absolutely, Mr. Kim added. It's an honor to have you here. We're huge fans of your work, you know. Your paintings bring so much life to this home. Looking around, I noticed several of my pieces hanging on their walls. It's so calming to see my art in a place like this, I said, touched by their admiration. As we settled down for dinner, Louise interrupted the flow of praise with a playful pout. See? They are welcoming you so much, so don't need to worry about it. His parents laughed, and so did Hazel and I, the tension of the day dissipating into lightheartedness. The next day, we decided to visit the orphanage where we had all grown up. Walking through the familiar gates brought a wave of nostalgia. The orphanage mother greeted us with open arms. My children, look at you, successful, grown, and so accomplished. We spent hours reminiscing and catching up. Hazel, Louise, and I even posed for a picture to be displayed on the orphanage's wall of alumni. As Louise helped Hazel with their baby, the orphanage mother pulled me aside. Rachel, she began hesitantly. A few days after you left for Italy, your husband came looking for you. I didn't tell him where you went, but I worried he might still find you somehow. I smiled softly, grateful for her discretion. He didn't, Mom. Thankfully, he never chased me down. Her face relaxed into a smile. Good. I was so worried about you, but it seems like you found your peace. We talked about old memories, the hardships we had overcome, and how far we had come. Later, as Louise, Hazel, and I stood near the playground, I could not resist teasing Hazel. Louise, did you know your wife used to cry so much after you left? This swing is practically rusted from her tears. Hazel gasped, lightly smacking my arm. Rachel, don't tell him that. Louise grinned mischievously. Why not? I want to know how much they loved me all these years, dear. Hazel blushed furiously, trying to smack Louise's chest, but he dodged with a laugh. Don't be like that, Louise. The two of them ended up chasing each other around the playground like kids, their laughter filling the air. Watching them, I couldn't help but smile. So, this is what love looks like, I thought wistfully, swinging gently on the old swing set. As I sat there, lost in thought, a young man sat on the swing next to me. He was the same boy who came to me before I went to Italy. Finally back, huh? He said with a grin. And you brought friends, too. I smiled back. Yeah, it feels good to be back. Those two are alumni like me. He nodded. You know, we always wondered if we would live happily ever after once we grew up. It's nice to see that some of us really made it. He paused for a moment before adding. Oh, by the way, someone came looking for you back then. Treated us all to ice cream. Cool guy. Said he could buy the whole ice cream factory if he wanted. The playful smile on my face faltered slightly. Did he say his name? The young man scratched his head. Nah, I forgot to ask. But he was tall, well-dressed, and kind of intense. Sound familiar? My heart sank. There was only one person who fit that description. It was Gale. So, he had been looking for me. But why? Did he say anything else? I asked, my voice steady though my heart raced. The boy shook his head, kicking at the ground to rock his swing gently. Nope, just asked about you and left after buying us all ice cream. Oh, and he looked really tired, like he had not slept in days. I swallowed hard, processing the boy's words. But he had never cared before, so what had changed? Chapter 16. Cool story, I said, forcing a smile for the boy's benefit. Thanks for sharing. He grinned and hopped off the swing. Sure, tell your friend thanks for crying so much, her tears probably made the grass here grow. I chuckled softly as he ran off, his carefree innocence a stark contrast to the storm in my heart. The next few days flew by in a blur. I threw myself into preparing for a small exhibition at a local gallery, a project encouraged by Mr. and Mrs. Kim. Your art deserves to be seen here. Again, Mrs. Kim said, her voice brimming with enthusiasm. Providence needs your talent back. I hugged her and said with a smile. Thank you. Then, during a quiet moment in the studio, Hazel came to sit beside me. Since I had promised to open the next exhibition to collaborate with her, she also prepared it with me. Rachel, Hazel said, breaking the silence. You've been unusually quiet since we visited the orphanage. Is something on your mind? I hesitated, my paintbrush hovering mid-stroke. Sharing my thoughts was not easy, but Hazel had always been supportive. Finally, I said, that boy at the orphanage's playground, He told me someone was looking for me after I left. I'm pretty sure it was Gale. Hazel's brows knitted together. Do you think he's still looking for you? I sighed, setting the brush down. I don't know. Part of me hopes he's given up, but another part, I just don't understand why he'd care now. After everything, I trailed off, unsure how to put my conflicting emotions into words. Hazel placed a reassuring hand on mine. Whatever his reasons, remember you're not alone this time. We're here for you. Her kindness brought a small smile to my face. Thank you, Hazel. That means a lot. Then we immersed ourselves in preparations for the exhibition, brainstorming ideas for a theme that would capture both of our styles. Hazel suggested a concept rooted in transformation. It was about our shared journey from childhood at the orphanage to the lives we had now built for ourselves. I think metamorphosis would be perfect, Hazel said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. It represents change, growth, and rebirth, which we've both experienced in so many ways. I nodded, her words resonating deeply. It's fitting, and it gives us a lot of creative freedom. Let's do it. Louise chimed in, his tone encouraging. It's a brilliant theme. And don't worry about logistics, I'll take care of all the promotion and sponsorship. We'll make this unforgettable. Having my childhood friends by my side during the preparation felt like a gift. There was a natural ease in our collaboration, a rhythm that reminded me of the simpler days when life was not clouded by heartbreak or tangled in complicated relationships. For a brief time, I even forgot about my lingering worries. However, Louise eventually mentioned something that sent a faint ripple of unease through me. By the way, he said casually, flipping through some brochures for the gallery. Douglas Group is likely to attend. They re one of the biggest conglomerates in Providence, and they sponsor events like these all the time. I stiffened for a moment but forced myself to nod. I suppose it's inevitable. Louise seemed to catch the tension in my voice and added quickly, but don't stress about it. Gale isn't a director there anymore. He won't have the kind of influence to just walk in. And even if he did, I'll be here. His reassurance brought a faint smile to my lips. Thanks, Louise. I'm not sure what I'd do without you too. He grinned, you'd manage just fine. But luckily, you don't have to. With that, I chose to put my faith in their words and focus on the event. After everything, finally the exhibition day approached, the studio buzzed with activity. Louise insisted on showcasing the best of both Hazel's and my work. You've got this, Rachel, he said, confidently as we finalized the displays. Your pieces are going to steal the show. The night of the exhibition was electric. The gallery was packed with friends, art enthusiasts, and critics. Hazel and Louise stayed by my side, introducing me to guests and helping me navigate the crowd. This one's already sold, Louise exclaimed gleefully, pointing to a vibrant painting inspired by my time in Italy. I laughed, warmth blooming in my chest. I guess I owe you for bringing in the sponsors, huh? He smirked. Just name your next masterpiece after me. The Louise effect sounds good, don't you think? My friend Minnie arrived not long after, her energy lighting up the room. Rachel, she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. You haven't changed at all. Italy must have done you some good. I raised an eyebrow playfully. What, did you think I'd come back scolding people for breaking pasta or putting pineapple on pizza? Minnie laughed. Exactly. Anyway, introduce me to Hazel. That dress she made is stunning. Sure, she, 11 love having another fan. As Hazel and Minnie wandered off to admire the displays, Louise and I stayed back, watching the guests. I think Minnie and Hazel will be inseparable after this, I said. Louise groaned. Great, at least she will have a new friend after this, so you will be free sometimes. We both laughed, the camaraderie easing the tension I had not realized I had been holding. But then, my gaze drifted across the room and froze. Standing in the corner, partially obscured by the crowd, was a man I knew too well. It was Gale. His usually sharp, polished appearance was gone. He looked exhausted, his face drawn and framed by dark circles. His posture was hunched, as though carrying an unbearable weight. Gale, I whispered, my voice barely audible. His eyes met mine, and the noise of the gallery seemed to fade away. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken words. Louise noticed the change in my demeanor and followed my gaze. His jaw tightened. Rachel, is that your ex? Yes, I whispered, my chest tightening. It's Gale. By the time I spoke, Gale had already started weaving through the crowd, heading straight for me. Louise moved closer, his protective instincts kicking in. Do you want me to ask him to leave? I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. No, let me handle this. I think Before I could finish, Gale was upon us. Without a word, he suddenly swung at Louise, landing a punch squarely on his face. Gale, stop, I screamed, horrified as Louise staggered backward, clutching his jaw. Chapter 17. Gale, I gasped, stepping between him and Louise, who stumbled back, clutching his face in shock. What are you doing? Gale's eyes blazed with a storm of emotions, frustration, anger, and something unrecognizable. So, he is the reason you want to divorce me? Louise straightened, wiping a trickle of blood from the corner of his lip, his expression calm yet tinged with disdain. So, this is the man who married you for 4 years, Rachel? Before I could answer, the two men locked eyes, the tension between them electric. What do you mean by that? Gale sneered, his voice dripping with venom. I'm more capable of giving her what she needs than you, a fake son trying to prove himself. Louise smirked, his voice steady. At least my love for Rachel has never been fake. Gale's expression darkened, his fists clenching at his sides. How dare you? Enough, I shouted, my voice cutting through the growing chaos. My hands trembled as I stood between them. Stop this, right now. I turned to Gale, my tone sharp, the hurt in my chest boiling over. What are you even doing here? You have no right to come barging into my life like this, let alone act like some possessive husband. Gale's expression faltered, but only for a moment. His voice lowered, rough and strained. I had to see you, Rachel. You disappeared for 2 years, without a word. I let out a bitter laugh, crossing my arms. I have told you to sign the divorce paper before I go. Wait, don't tell me you haven't signed the divorce papers yet, I added, narrowing my eyes at him. Gale's face hardened. How could I sign something I never agreed to? Agreed to? Louise interjected, stepping closer. You don't get to decide what Rachel does with her life. Not anymore. Stay out of this, Gale snapped, turning on him. Who even are you to her? Did you two get married while I was still her husband? Rachel, we're not even divorced yet. Louise squared his shoulders, his voice calm but firm. I am her friend. And, unlike you, I actually know how to treat her like a human being. Gale's jaw tightened, his knuckles white with tension. He opened his mouth to retort, but I stepped forward, my voice trembling with anger. Stop it, both of you. Turning to Gale, I said coldly, you don't get to barge in here and interrogate me like this. You had 4 years to care, Gale. 4 years of ignoring me, of making me feel invisible. And now you want to act like you care? It's too late. Gale's expression shifted, the fight draining from his posture. Rachel, I know I messed up. I hurt you in ways I'll never be able to make up for. But I can't let you go. I need you. Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You don't need me, Gale. You just don't want to be alone. You loved Lilian, not me. You used me to patch the wounds she left behind, and I won't be your bandage anymore. Gale's lips parted as if to argue, but Louise cut in, his voice steady. You heard her. She's done, Gale. Leave. Gale's shoulders slumped, his eyes flickering with regret. For a moment, he seemed on the verge of arguing, but then he nodded slowly. His voice, when he spoke, was barely above a whisper. I'll go. But, Rachel, I am not giving up. Not yet. He turned and walked away, the crowd parting like waves to let him through. Hazel and Minnie hurried to my side, their faces etched with concern. Hazel placed a hand on Louise's shoulder. Are you okay? That was intense. Louise rubbed his jaw, wincing slightly but managing a small smile. Well, I wasn't expecting to get punched tonight. Guess I should have braced myself. I gave a weak laugh, guilt tugging at my heart. I'm so sorry, Louise. I didn't mean for you to get dragged into this mess. He waved me off. It's not your fault, Rachel. Gale clearly has issues, but that's not on you. Minnie glanced toward the door, where Gale had disappeared. Do you want us to call security? Just in case he comes back? I shook my head, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. No, it's fine. I don't think he'll cause any more trouble tonight. Hazel squeezed my hand gently, her warmth grounding me. You don't have to face this alone, Rachel. We're here for you. Her words brought tears to my eyes, but I blinked them away, managing a small smile. Thank you, all of you. As the night wore on, I tried to focus on the success of the exhibition, the glowing compliments, the pieces being sold, and the pride I felt seeing my work appreciated. But Gale's words lingered, his presence casting a long shadow over my thoughts. For years, I had yearned for him to see me, to value me as his partner, his wife. But in the end, I had been nothing more than a placeholder, a shadow of someone he truly loved. The chapter with Gale was over. And no matter how hard he tried, I was determined to leave it firmly closed. But to my surprise, Gale came again to the second day of the exhibition. At that time, Hazel and Louise were not there with me. When I was looking at the works that had been sold one by one, out of nowhere, I felt someone wrap their arms around me from behind. My breath hitched, and my body tensed as I instinctively pulled away, spinning around. There he was. Gale? I exclaimed, my voice tinged with shock and irritation. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of regret and determination. Rachel, he said softly, his voice laden with emotions I was not prepared to handle. What are you doing here again? I asked, my tone sharp. I came to see your work, he replied, his eyes flickering to the painting nearest to us, a piece inspired by the profound loneliness I had endured in Providence. It's beautiful. I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. I don't need your compliments, Gale. His gaze returned to mine, unwavering. I needed to see you. To explain myself. I know I've hurt you, and I know I don't deserve your time, but I can't leave things as they are. I shook my head, exhaling a bitter laugh. Haven't you gotten enough closure, Gale? Didn't your mother explain everything to you? Why were we even together in the first place? His shoulders slumped slightly, the weight of guilt visible in his stance. She told me about the agreement, he admitted. I read it. I know now why you stayed with me. But, he hesitated, his voice dropping. Was there never a day during those 4 years when you saw me as more than an obligation? When you considered me your husband, not just someone you should marry because of the agreement with my mother? Chapter 18. His question cut through me. Memories of the wedding, of the initial flickers of hope, surfaced unbidden. There was a time when I had wanted to love him, wanted to believe he could love me. But that time had been crushed the day he dismissed our child, then worsened by the day he chose Lilian over me. I could not bring myself to answer, and my silence spoke volumes. Gale's expression grew more painful. I knew I was such a fool who didn't see what I had until I lost it, he said, his voice rough. I let my past, my mistakes, blind me to the woman right in front of me. And he swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Rachel, for everything. His apology was sincere, the weight of his regret palpable. But I was not ready to let him off so easily. It's too late, Gale, I replied firmly. You had your chance. 4 years of chances. I waited for you, hoping you'd notice me, that you'd see me for who I was. But you didn't. I've moved on, and I won't go back to being that woman. His shoulders sagged further, his voice quieter now. Do you really want this divorce? Yes, I answered without hesitation, meeting his gaze. He took a shaky breath, his eyes desperate. What if I told you I love you? That I was a fool for not realizing it sooner? Losing you these past 2 years made me see. I cut him off, my tone steely. No, Gale, you don't love me. What you feel is guilt, regret, or maybe just the discomfort of losing something familiar. It's not love. It never was. You'll forget me soon enough, just like you always chose to forget me whenever Lilian entered the picture. So please, just sign the papers and let me go. That's my final wish. Gale's face fell, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. If that's what you truly want, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Then I'll do it. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me amidst the bustling crowd. The exhibition continued despite the incident. Guests came and went, admiring the art, congratulating me on the success of the show. I managed to smile and thank them, but my mind kept drifting back to Gale's words. On the last day, a delivery arrived. It was a bouquet of pristine white roses, accompanied by a note. Gale, congratulations on the success of your exhibition. I'll sign the papers when I'm ready, but I still hope we can reconcile someday. I stared at the note, my chest tightening, then threw the flowers into the trash. A few hours later, my phone rang. Seeing Mrs. Douglas's name on the screen, I hesitated but picked up. Rachel, can you come to the hospital? She asked, her voice weak but steady. Without thinking twice, I rushed out. When I arrived, I hesitated at the door to her room because I saw Gale sitting beside her, his expression uncharacteristically tender. As if sensing my presence, Gale looked up. His face softened with a smile, but I immediately turned away, unwilling to engage. I'll come back later, Mrs. Douglas, I said, ready to leave. Rachel, please come in, her frail voice called out. If it makes you uncomfortable, I'll ask Gale to wait outside. She turned to Gale, her tone firm despite her condition. Gale, can you give us a moment? He hesitated but nodded. Without a word, he walked past me, his presence brushing against mine. I kept my eyes fixed ahead, unwilling to meet his gaze. As I sat by Mrs. Douglas's side, she took my hand, her pale fingers trembling. "Rachel," she began, her voice tinged with guilt, "I'm sorry for everything. I never meant to make things harder for you." I shook my head, my heart aching for the woman who had once been my greatest supporter. "No, Mrs. Douglas, you've been nothing but kind to me. I wouldn't be where I am today without you." Her eyes filled with tears. "But as a mother, I can't stand to see my son suffer. This is just like 6 years ago, maybe worse. I can see now that Gale truly loves you, Rachel. He's changed." The words hit me like a wave, and I swallowed hard, holding back my own tears. I had once believed that she alone could understand me, but that illusion shattered as I came to realize I was truly alone in this world. In the Douglas family, no one would stand by my side, because I had never truly been a part of it. Her voice faltered, her breathing shallow. "Rachel, my condition is getting worse, and all I want is to see my son happy. Please." She reached for a checkbook and began writing. The number of zeros on the page made my head spin. "Could you give Gale a second chance?" Chapter 19. She slid the check toward me, her pleading eyes locking with mine. Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I sat upright, willing myself to stay composed. "Mrs. Douglas," I said, my voice cold but steady, "I appreciate everything you've done for me. Without your support, I wouldn't have been able to achieve my dreams. But have you ever considered that I never asked for more than an education? I worked hard for every scholarship, every opportunity. Even in Italy, I lived independently, without troubling you. So why?" My voice cracked slightly. "Why do you treat me as if I'm something that can be bought?" Gale's mother's face softened with regret. Her hands trembled slightly as she clasped them together. "Rachel, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. This check, it's not just money. Think of it as a guarantee, my way of ensuring that Gale will never hurt you again. Because there's nothing else I can offer you." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I hesitated. But then, a sharp wave of anger and heartbreak surged through me, breaking the silence. I stood, taking a shaky breath. "Mrs. Douglas," I said, my voice firm but trembling slightly, "thanks to your generosity, I've saved enough to live comfortably for the next 10 years. I'm grateful, truly. But rather than enduring more pain with your son, I'd rather live alone. It may sound harsh," I continued, rising from my seat, "but the 4 years I gave to your son should be enough to repay my debt of gratitude to you. I have nothing more to give." I bowed my head, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you for everything. I hope you recover soon." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the VIP room. A single tear slipped down my cheek, betraying the whirlwind of emotions I tried so hard to suppress. Outside the room, Gale was leaning against the wall. When he saw me, his eyes immediately filled with concern. He stepped forward, grabbing my arm gently. "Rachel," he said, his voice full of worry, "why are you crying?" I pulled my arm free from his grip, glaring at him. "Did you ask your mother to persuade me to come back to you?" "Rachel, you told me you would sign the papers soon." I cut him off, my voice rising slightly. "But it seems I can't trust a single word you say, Gale." He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him standing in stunned silence. My heart ached more than I could express. After that day, I did not hear anything from the Douglas family. I poured myself into preparing for Hazel and Louise's baby's first birthday celebration at Kim Manor, hoping to focus on something joyous and meaningful. But my hope of avoiding the Douglas family entirely was dashed when Grit arrived as their representative. "You," she hissed, her voice low but laced with venom. Chapter 20. The moment her piercing gaze locked onto me, I felt the air shift, heavy with her brewing disdain. Grit stormed toward me, her movements sharp and deliberate, a predator zeroing in on its prey. I instinctively stepped back, trying to avoid the confrontation, but she blocked my path with a swift, calculated motion. Before I could utter a word, she shoved me forcefully, sending me stumbling backwards. A hushed gasp rippled through the room as every eye turned toward us. "How dare you reject my brother, Rachel?" Grit's voice rang out, venom dripping from every syllable. "Who do you think you are? Do you even realize how lucky you were that we were willing to take you back? And yet, you arrogantly rejected us like we were beneath you." The sharpness of her words sliced through the silence, leaving a sting that settled deep in my chest. Her anger filled the room, drawing everyone's attention like moths to a flame. I steadied myself, forcing a calmness that belied the turmoil within me. I thought marriage was supposed to unite two families, a bridge between lives, hopes, and dreams. So, when I accepted the offer to marry Gale, I genuinely believed I was finally gaining the family I had longed for since childhood. But the reality was far from what I had envisioned. No matter how much I gave, no matter how hard I tried, it became painfully clear that I was never truly accepted by the Douglas family. I was tolerated, but never embraced. Reflecting on those 4 years, I realized how much strength it had taken to survive. In a house that never felt like home, I could not help but feel a small sense of pride for enduring it all. That's enough, Grit, I said evenly, my voice low but firm. This isn't the place for your theatrics. Theatrics? She snapped, her eyes blazing. How dare you say that to me? We gave you everything, status, wealth, a chance to live among us. And this is how you repay us? Her voice grew louder, each word cutting deeper as the whispers around us intensified. Some onlookers exchanged smug smirks, reveling in my discomfort. Others murmured quietly, pity evident in their glances. I retorted, my voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the tension. 4 years of enduring your contempt, your family's indifference, and your brother's street obsession with someone else, was that your idea of generosity? You're ungrateful. Grit took a step closer, her face twisted with fury. She raised her hand to slap me. But that time, I was ready. I caught her hand mid-swing, holding it firmly. Stop this, I said quietly, meeting her gaze. You, re-embarrassing yourself. Chapter 21. Her face twisted with fury, and before I could react, she raised her other hand and yanked my hair, pulling me off balance. The room erupted into chaos as she dragged me backward, both of us stumbling into tables and chairs. Guests gasped, some stepping forward to help, others too stunned to move. Let go of me, Grit. I shouted, trying to free myself from her grip. Not until you pay for humiliating my family, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. By the time Louise and Hazel spotted us and rushed over to intervene, it was too late. In our struggle, Grit backed into the elaborate juice tower at the center of the banquet hall. The tower wobbled precariously before toppling over, sending glasses and juice crashing to the floor. The sound was deafening, and in the chaos, shards of glass scattered everywhere. Grit let out a sharp cry as the broken glass cut her arm. I, on the other hand, fell backward into a puddle of spilled juice, drenched but unharmed. Rachel, Hazel cried, running to my side. She draped Louise's coat over my shoulders as I sat on the floor, dazed. Meanwhile, Grit's bodyguards hurried to her side, carefully lifting her and assessing her injuries. The banquet came to a standstill as guests whispered among themselves, their gazes darting between me and the injured Grit. Is she okay? One guest murmured. Did you see what happened? Another asked, pulling out their phone to check the footage they had recorded. Before I could say a word, Louise helped me to my feet. Let's get you cleaned up, he said firmly, his voice calm but protective. As Grit was escorted to the hospital by her bodyguards, the whispers grew louder. Hazel guided me to a quieter corner of the banquet hall, helping me clean up as best as she could. The aftermath of the incident spread like wildfire. By the time I got into the manor, the internet was ablaze with news of the Douglas family's latest scandal. Grit Douglas caused trouble at the Kim family banquet. Videos of the altercation had gone viral, with headlines highlighting Grit's unprovoked attack on me. The comments ranged from shock to outright condemnation. The Douglas family is truly a mess. Attacking someone at a public event? How uncivilized. Grit really embarrassed Douglas's name. No wonder Rachel left them. Though the whispers at the banquet had been humiliating, seeing the public outcry against the Douglas family gave me an odd sense of validation. As I was scrolling through my phone, a gentle knock on my bedroom door interrupted my thoughts. Hazel's voice followed, soft yet concerned. Can I come in? Sure, I replied, my voice barely audible. Hazel stepped inside, her presence comforting as always. I did not waste a moment before apologizing, my guilt spilling over. I'm so sorry, Hazel. This was supposed to be a memorable first birthday for your baby. Instead, it turned into chaos because of me. My voice cracked, and I could not continue. I buried my face in my hands, tears streaming uncontrollably. Hazel quickly sat beside me, wrapping her arms around me in a warm, protective embrace. That's okay, Rachel, she said softly. You don't need to feel guilty. Haven, Louise and I already told you? They got us now. We're here for you. But this chaos wouldn't have happened if I hadn't come, I choked out, my words broken by sobs. Hazel shook her head firmly. No, Rachel, this isn't your fault. It's because of Grit. I honestly think she came to the banquet just to find you and cause trouble. Sniffling, I asked hesitantly, do you know how she's doing now? Hazel sighed, her tone thoughtful yet concerned. Louise said Mr. Douglas isn't going to let this slide easily. This whole fiasco has deeply embarrassed their family, and it's made them owe a significant debt to the Kim family for ruining our event. I doubt things will end well for her. Just as Hazel predicted, the fallout for the Douglas family was swift and severe. Gale's father, already frustrated by the worsening reputation of the family, reached his breaking point. News about the Douglas family's decline spread like wildfire, with headlines speculating about internal turmoil. It was reported that Gale's father severely reprimanded Gale's mother, accusing her of failing to raise their children properly, which he believed had led to Grit's disgraceful behavior. The blame did not stop there. Gale, already struggling after my departure, became another target of his father's wrath. Projects he managed had started failing, and his work performance was in shambles. Gale's father could not hide his disappointment and saw it as yet another failure linked to his wife's influence. You've become weak, he reportedly told Gale. All because of a woman. Chapter 22. He stepped closer, his face etched with desperation. How did you know I was here, Gale? As I saw Minnie come back early, I decided to follow her, Gale admitted, his voice strained, carrying a mixture of desperation and guilt. As I suspected, she really did hang out with you like she usually does when she gets home early from work. I had to see you, Rachel. His words sent a chill through me. The fact that he had followed Minnie, trailing her movements just to find me, bordered on obsession. You had to see me? I repeated, my tone sharp with disbelief. Gale, this isn't normal. You can't just stalk my friends to track me down. I wasn't stalking, he defended, his voice faltering. I just needed to talk to you. To explain, I cut him off, holding up a hand. No, Gale, we've talked. I've explained everything, repeatedly. There's nothing left to say. His face crumpled, a crack forming in his composed facade. Rachel, please. I know I made mistakes, but I'm trying to make things right. By following my friends and cornering me at night? I shot back, taking a step away from him. That's not making things right. That's controlling, Gale. And that's exactly why I left. He stepped forward, closing the gap between us. Rachel, don't you see? I'm doing this because I can't let you go. You're the only thing that's ever felt real in my life, and I was too blind to see it until you were gone. Stay back, I shouted, my voice trembling. If you come any closer, I'll call the police. Gale froze, his hands clenching at his sides as if physically restraining himself from reaching out. I didn't mean to scare you, he whispered, his voice breaking. I don't know how else to show you that I've changed. I could not trust his words. I could not trust him. Desperate to escape, I turned and stepped off the curb without looking. In my fear, I did not see the car speeding towards me. Everything happened so quickly. In an instant, Gale lunged toward me, pushing me out of the car's path. The impact sent him sprawling onto the pavement, the sickening sound of metal against flesh reverberating in the air. Gasps echoed around us as a crowd gathered. Someone called an ambulance while others pulled out their phones, snapping pictures of the scene. I laid on the ground, stunned and trembling. My vision blurred, and the last thing I heard before losing consciousness was the distant sound of sirens. When I woke up, the sterile smell of the hospital filled my senses. Panic surged through me as I bolted upright. Gale, I gasped. Chapter 23. The nurse on duty immediately approached as I stirred awake. She checked my vitals, her expression professional but kind. How are you feeling? She asked gently. I'm fine, I replied, though my voice trembled slightly. Was the man brought here too? Her brow furrowed momentarily before understanding dawned. You mean the man who saved you? I nodded urgently. Yes, him. Yes, he is here, but he is in the operating room, she explained. His condition is critical. I am sorry. Her words hit me like a blow. I clasped my hand over my mouth, the weight of what had happened settling heavily on my chest. Gale had risked his life for me. The nurse gave me a sympathetic look. If your condition is stable, you can be discharged after completing the administration. Is there anything else you need? I shook my head numbly. No, thank you. As she left, I reached for my phone on the nightstand, noticing a barrage of missed calls and messages. The night had turned into dawn and one message caught my eye. It was from Louise. Louise. Rachel, what happened? Everyone's worried. There's news everywhere, and it's so confusing. Tell me where you are, I'll come get you. I dialed her number, explaining everything that had happened before I blacked out. His voice was filled with concern as he reassured me, "Stay put. I'm coming to the hospital right now." By the time Louise arrived, the sun was already rising. He helped me finalize the paperwork and hovered as I prepared to leave. "Are you sure you're really okay?" he asked, his worry evident. I nodded. "I am fine physically, but what about the news? You said it was everywhere?" Louise pulled out his phone and handed it to me. The headline blared across the screen: "Douglas family's daughter allegedly drunk driving hits Gale Douglas." There were more articles, all focused on Gale and Grit. But what struck me was the absence of my name. "It's all so confusing," I admitted. "Why isn't my name mentioned at all? And why is Grit involved?" Louise sighed, sitting down beside me. "It's a lot, so let me explain everything from the beginning and from the report I got from my man." He recounted the events of the previous night. "The news initially mentioned you because the street CCTV footage showed Gale saving you. But when the investigation revealed that the driver was Grit and that she was drunk, Mr. Douglas stepped in. He made sure your name was wiped from the reports. He didn't want you involved in their family's chaos. At the police station, witnesses and evidence confirmed that Grit was aiming for you. She admitted everything while drunk, but it's being kept under wraps. Mr. Douglas doesn't want the public to know his daughter tried to kill you." My eyes widened in horror. She wanted to kill me?" Louise nodded solemnly. "It seems so. But now she's in prison, and Gale, well, he's still in the operating room. Oh, and one more thing, your divorce is finalized. Are you sure about it?" I whispered. "Yes, Mr. Douglas expedited the process," Louise explained. "You're free now, Rachel. And guess what? Your visa has been approved. You can leave for Italy as soon as today." Relief and disbelief washed over me. "Thank you, Louise, for everything." Before leaving the hospital, I debated visiting Gale, but with him still unconscious, I chose another path. I sent flowers with a simple note: "Thank you for saving me, Gale. Goodbye." Chapter 24. Back at Kim Manor, I began preparing for my departure. Sorting through my belongings, I came across unopened packages, gifts Gale had sent to my studio. Among the items, one caught my attention. It was my wedding ring. I had not worn it since I lost my baby. The pain had been too much to bear, and over time, I had buried it along with the memories. Holding it at that time felt surreal, a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. It was already dulled and corroded, seemed to mirror the state of our relationship, something that had once held promise but was now irreparably tarnished. As I turned it over, memories I thought I had buried began to surface. I remembered the day Gale jumped into the cold, choppy waters off the coast of LA to retrieve this very ring. We had been on a vacation, a desperate attempt to comfort me after I lost our baby. I had thrown the ring into the sea in a fit of despair, unable to bear the weight of it, the reminder of everything I had lost. But Gale had not hesitated. He dove in, fighting the waves, determined to bring it back to me. He had held it out to me, dripping wet and shivering, and said, "This isn't just a ring, Rachel. It's a promise. I won't let you give up on us." For a fleeting moment, I had believed him. I had allowed myself to forget the pain, to see the man I had once hoped he could be. I even began to let him back into my heart, thinking perhaps we could heal together. But then Lilian returned. However, her arrival was not the sole reason our relationship crumbled, since it had been on shaky ground from the beginning. Lilian was merely the catalyst that exposed the fractures we had tried so hard to ignore. Gale's attention drifted back to her as though drawn by an invisible tether, and I was left standing in the shadows once more. Looking at the ring at that moment, I realized how symbolic it was of our relationship. Beautiful at first, yet brittle beneath the surface. No matter how hard Gale might try to repair what was broken, it was too late. The years of neglect, betrayal, and unspoken resentment had eroded anything we once shared. There was no feeling left for Gale in my heart. I had left him behind when I moved to Italy, and that was where he would stay. With a sigh, I placed the ring back into its box and set it aside with the other items I planned to leave behind. It was time to move forward. Before heading to Italy, I stopped by the orphanage one last time. I carried the donations I had prepared and handed them to the staff. The orphanage mother greeted me warmly, her face lighting up as she saw me. "Rachel, it's always so wonderful to see you." I smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "I'm here to say goodbye. I am leaving for Italy again, and I don't know if I'll ever return to Providence." Her eyes softened, and she took my hands in hers. "You've always been such a bright light, Rachel. No matter where you go, I know you'll shine. But remember, this will always be your home if you ever need it. Her words brought a lump to my throat, and I nodded. Thank you. For everything. You've always been a mother to me when I had no one else. We shared a long embrace before I turned to leave, taking one last look at the playground where I had spent so many of my childhood days. The swings swayed gently in the breeze, and for a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia. But I reminded myself that the past was just the past. I walked out of the orphanage with a sense of closure, ready to embrace the new chapter waiting for me in Italy. But when I was about to find a taxi, I saw Mrs. Douglas came with her car. She sat in the passenger seat and opened the window to talk to me. Can we talk for a minute, Rachel? Chapter 25. At first, I hesitated to say yes. But Gale's mother looked frail, her pale complexion and thinner frame betraying her declining health. I could not risk refusing her, not after everything that had happened. Finally, I nodded and got into her car. We headed to a quiet, upscale restaurant to talk privately. As we sat, I could not help but feel nostalgic. That restaurant had been where Gale's mother first took me years ago to celebrate my high school graduation. Back then, it had also been the place where she brought up the idea of my marriage to Gale, a proposal I had accepted with hope for a happy ending. But that hope had turned into something else entirely. We were seated in a private booth, the dim lighting adding an air of intimacy to our conversation. For a few moments, silence hung between us, the weight of unspoken words making my chest feel tight. It was Gale's mother who spoke first, breaking the tension. Rachel, she began softly, her voice tinged with regret. I'm so sorry for my reckless actions back then. I never meant to offend you. I didn't know what else to do for my two children. My thoughts were all over the place. Her candor caught me off guard, and I hesitated before replying, Mrs. Douglas, there's no need to think about it anymore. I've forgiven you. I offered her a small, genuine smile. You've done so much for me, more than I could ever repay. You changed my life when you came into it 10 years ago. For that, I'll always be grateful. Tears welled in her eyes, and she shook her head. No, Rachel, it's me who should be thanking you. And I owe you an apology. I know my actions, especially recently, must have hurt you deeply. I acted recklessly too, I said gently. I shouldn't have spoken so harshly at the hospital. I know I must have hurt your feelings. She quickly waved off my apology. No, I deserved every word, she said earnestly. You were right to feel the way you did. She paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. And I know you may not want to hear about this, but I hope it brings you some peace to know. Gale's condition has stabilized. He's still in a coma, but the doctors say there's hope. We're just waiting for him to wake up. I felt a lump form in my throat, but I nodded, signaling for her to go on. As for Grit, she added with a heavy sigh, she'll be in prison for a long time. You don't need to worry about her. When she's released, there will be strict conditions. She won't be allowed to leave the country or contact you, even in Italy. That's a relief, I murmured. My husband also asked me to convey his sincerest apologies, she said, her voice breaking slightly. He knows we failed both our children and you. We should have done better. I placed my hand over hers on the table. Mrs. Douglas, I've let go of everything. That happened in Providence. I don't want to carry any bitterness with me to Italy. Please tell Gale that I'm grateful for what he did. He saved my life. And I wish all of you well moving forward. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears, and squeezed my hand. Thank you, Rachel. I wish you all the happiness in the world in Italy. You deserve it. When the conversation ended, she had her driver take me back to the Kim family manor. As the car pulled up, I hesitated before stepping out. Turning to her one last time, I said, take care of yourself, Mrs. Douglas. I hope your health improves. And thank you for everything. She gave me a sad smile and nodded. Goodbye, Rachel. The car pulled away, disappearing down the long driveway. I stood there for a moment, letting the finality of it sink in. When I walked into the manor, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. Surprise. Hazel, Louise, Minnie. Louise's parents, and the manor staff shouted in unison. My jaw dropped as I took in the decorations, the table laden with food, and the warm smiles on everyone's faces. They had prepared a farewell party for me. Tears welled in my eyes as I laughed. You didn't have to do all this. Louise grinned. Of course we did. You, not just leaving for a vacation, Rachel. You, starting a whole new chapter in your life. Hazel wrapped her arms around me. We couldn't let you leave without a proper send-off. Minnie chimed in, and besides, who knows when we'll all be together like this again, right? Chapter 26. We spent the afternoon laughing, reminiscing, and making promises to visit each other. The warmth and love in that room filled a void I hadn't realized I was carrying. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. After the short but heartfelt farewell party, I hugged everyone tightly, promising to keep in touch. My heart swelled with gratitude for the love and support they had given me, yet a sense of anticipation for the future replaced the bittersweetness of leaving. At the airport, I took one last glance at Providence as the plane ascended. For the first time, I was not running away. I was moving forward, leaving behind a story I had completed. Back in Italy, I was immediately swept into the vibrancy of my new life. My professor, who had always supported my work, offered me a position in his studio. "Rachel," he said with a warm smile, "I see great potential in your art. Let's make something extraordinary together." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparations for an upcoming exhibition. My days were busy but fulfilling. The studio buzzed with creativity, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. One afternoon, as I was sketching in the studio, my professor walked in with a tall, sharp-featured man who looked vaguely familiar. "Rachel," he said, "I'd like you to meet my son, Andrea Lorenzo. You may remember him, he taught a few guest lectures when you were in college." Andrea extended his hand, his eyes warm and inviting. "It's good to see you again, Rachel," he said, his voice carrying a light Italian accent. The resemblance between Andrea and his father was uncanny, and I could not help but smile. "I do remember. You were the lecturer everyone liked because you made everything sound so inspiring." Andrea chuckled. "That's high praise. I hope I can live up to it." As weeks turned into months, Andrea and I grew closer. Our shared passion for art and creativity became the foundation of our relationship. Over coffee, walking through Italian streets, and late-night discussions in the studio, I began to let my walls down. One evening, as we strolled through a bustling piazza, Andrea paused and looked at me. "Rachel," he said, his voice soft but steady, "I know your past has been painful, but I see a future with you, one filled with love and joy. Would you be willing to take that step with me?" His sincerity melted away the lingering shadows of my past. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. Within a month, Andrea and I decided to move in together. Our conversations often turned to dreams of marriage and children, painting a picture of a life I had not dared to imagine before. A year after returning to Italy, we celebrated our wedding in a sunlit vineyard. I was 4 months pregnant with twins, making the day even more special. Hazel, Louise, Minnie, and Louise's parents all flew in for the occasion, their presence turning the event into a joyous reunion. During the bouquet toss, Minnie and an Italian man who was a school friend of Andrea's both caught the flowers. Laughter erupted as Minnie blushed furiously. "Looks like you might be next," I teased her later, and she grinned, her eyes sparkling. Few weeks after my wedding, it seemed that Minnie loved to call me just to ask about Andrea's friend, so I always chatted with her. However, my phone buzzed with a call from Louise so suddenly. "Minnie, I need to take this," I said, excusing myself. "I'll call you back. Take your time," Minnie said, waving me off. Chapter 27. The words hit me like a wave, leaving me momentarily speechless. My chest tightened. Despite everything, Mrs. Douglas had been a mother figure to me when I needed it most. The memory of our last conversation replayed in my mind, her frail but kind smile, her words of encouragement. "Thank you for letting me know," I said softly. Louise's voice grew gentler. "Sure." Later, I sat by the window, staring out at the rolling hills of the Italian countryside. Andrea found me there, his presence grounding. "You've been quiet," he said, sitting beside me. "What's on your mind?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But Andrea had always been understanding, never pushing me about my past. That time, I felt it was important to explain everything, to ensure there were no misunderstandings between us. "There's something I need to tell you," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. Andrea gave me a reassuring squeeze. "You can tell me anything, Rachel." Taking a deep breath, I started from the beginning, the day Mrs. Douglas had entered my life, offering to fund my education, and the subsequent years that led to my marriage to Gale. I shared the highs and the lows, the heartbreak of losing my child, and the eventual decision to leave Providence and start anew. Andrea listened without interruption, his expression soft but attentive. When I finished, he said, "Your past is part of who you are, but it doesn't define the person I fell in love with. Thank you for trusting me enough to share this." His words eased the knot in my chest. "Thank you," I whispered, feeling lighter. Then, I told him about her passing, and the complicated feelings it stirred within me. She was like a mother to me, I admitted, my voice trembling. Even after everything that happened, I can't help but feel grateful for what she did for me. But it's also hard. Andrea took my hand in his grip firm yet comforting. It's okay to feel both gratitude and sadness, honey. She played an important role in your life. Mourning her doesn't erase the struggles you faced, it just means you re-human. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but for the first time, they felt cleansing. Thanks, Andrea. You really are everything for me, I whispered, leaning into his shoulder. After discussing it with Andrea, we decided to come to the funeral. With Andrea's support and Louise's help, I booked a flight back to Providence. Andrea insisted on accompanying me, worried about the strain the trip might cause me, especially since I was 6 months pregnant. His care and attentiveness reminded me of how lucky I was to have him in my life. As we landed in Providence, Louise and Hazel greeted us at the airport. Their expressions were solemn, reflecting the weight of the occasion. The funeral is already underway, Louise said softly, guiding us to the car. The drive to the cemetery was quiet, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Andrea held my hand, his touch grounding me. However, Louise suddenly shared what had happened after I left Providence, maybe to make me ready about what happened in Providence during the year after I left for Italy. I think I should tell you this, he began. I nodded, asking him to continue. Chapter 28. Gale woke up from his coma about a month after you left. Then, as soon as he was able, he came looking for you. He also came to me, but I just tell him if you left for good. His mother didn't help either, Louise continued. She told him to move on and focus on rebuilding his life. And then there was the revelation about Grit. Louise's expression darkened. He found out that she was the one who caused the accident. She admitted that she had intended to kill you. That knowledge hit him hard, Rachel. He was filled with guilt, blaming himself for putting you in harm's way. I swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over me. Louise went on, he threw himself into his work, determined to fix the mess his family was in. Eventually, his father gave him another chance, reinstating him as CEO after seeing how much effort he was putting in. But just as things started to improve, his mother's health took a turn for the worse. So, she was sick? I asked, shocked. Louise nodded sadly. She had uterine cancer. She kept it hidden from everyone, including Gale, until it was too late. By the time it reached the final stage last month, there was nothing anyone could do. He trailed off, his voice breaking. I see. After that, the journey became quiet again, until finally we had reached our destination. As the car pulled into the cemetery, I could not help but notice how much had changed within the Douglas family. Once exuding strength and power, appeared a shadow of their former selves, still standing, but undeniably weathered by time and tragedy. When they saw me, their faces registered a mix of surprise and something akin to quiet resignation. There were no words exchanged, no gestures of acknowledgement. I stayed close to Louise and Hazel, determined to avoid causing any unnecessary trouble. But it did not take long for Gale to notice me. His attention, which had been focused elsewhere, suddenly shifted. His gaze lingered first on my face, then moved downward to my stomach, where the unmistakable curve of my twin pregnancy was visible. For a moment, his expression betrayed shock, but it quickly shifted to quiet understanding as he took in the ring on my finger and the man standing protectively beside me, Andrea. It seemed that in that instant, Gale grasped how much I had changed since I left Providence. The life he had once shared with me was no longer his to reclaim. After the service ended, I was ready to leave, but Gale approached me before I could step away. Rachel, he said, his tone softer than I had ever heard it. Could we talk for a moment? I hesitated, glancing at Andrea. He gave me a gentle nod. It's better to finish what's left unsaid, so there's no weight left on your heart, he said with quiet encouragement. Taking a deep breath, I agreed and followed Gale to a quieter corner of the cemetery. To my surprise, he did not bring up guilt or try to convince me to return. Instead, he seemed resigned, perhaps finally at peace with the reality of our separation. Thank you for coming, Rachel, he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. It means a lot, and I'm glad to see that you're happy now. His words caught me off guard, but I kept my composure. I'm sorry for your loss, Gale. I truly hope you can find the strength to move forward. And I hope you'll find your happiness too. We stood in silence for a moment, the finality of our goodbye settling between us. Take care, Rachel, he said quietly. You too, Gale, I replied, turning to walk away. Chapter 29. Back at the airport, Hazel and Louise accompanied Andrea and me as we prepared to board our flight. As we hugged goodbye, they both promised to visit after the twins were born. We're not missing out on spoiling those babies, Hazel said with a grin. You'd better keep us updated with lots of pictures until then, Louise added. Their promises brought a smile to my face. I'll hold you to that, I said, my heart lighter knowing they would be a part of my children's lives. As we turned to leave, a familiar voice called out behind us. Wait for me. To my surprise, it was Minnie, dragging a suitcase behind her. Minnie? I asked, bewildered. What's going on? She grinned. I resigned from the Douglas Group. I'm moving to Italy. Andrea raised an eyebrow. To become a wife? He teased, referencing the dream Minnie had mentioned before. Minnie nodded with mock seriousness. Exactly. It's time to go to my Italian prince. We all laughed, and Andrea and I welcomed her to our journey with open arms. Years passed, and the life I built in Italy became everything I had ever dreamed of. Andrea and I grew together, our love deepening with every painting, every shared success. As a painter couple, our exhibitions became highly anticipated events, drawing admirers from around the world. Our twins, bright and full of life, brought a vibrancy to our home that words could never capture. They were our muses, often joining us in the studio, their laughter echoing through the space as we worked. Hazel and Louise visited often, their bond with us and our children growing stronger with each visit. Minnie found her own happiness in Italy, eventually marrying Andrea's friend who took a bouquet on our wedding with her, a match we all celebrated with joy. Looking back, the chapter I left behind in Providence felt like a distant memory, a story that had shaped me but no longer defined me. My life with Andrea, our children, and our art was the masterpiece I had always wanted to create, and for the first time, I felt like the artist of my own destiny, painting a future filled with love, laughter, and boundless possibilities. The end. And that's a wrap on today's reading here at Booked for Drama. If you felt anything, rage, swoon, secondhand heartbreak, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your fellow drama lovers. If you have any requests, drop them in the comments. Until next time, keep reading, and keep the drama on the page.